Halo Bu Eka. Halo, halo.
Halo, Assalamualaikum Bu Zakia. Dr. Anda Zakia Tasnim, apakah mendengar suara saya?
Iya, iya bisa dengar. Halo.
Oke, Ibu.
Halo Pak David.
Iya.
Pak Rizky, halo.
Iya.
Bisa dengar saya?
Bisa, Mem.
Oke.
Bisa. Suara bisa kami terima dengan baik.
Ya, oke.
Pak, ayo ini lagi. Kelompok. Nah,
ya, ya.
di sini. Kelompoknya di situ.
Halo Pak Rizky. Halo.
Iya, Bu. Halo, selamat
baik.
pagi.
Ya wes, berarti sudah dengar. Iya, ini masih proses. Laptop saya benar nggak bisa dipakai untuk Pak Sultan ada, pinjam punya Pak Sultan.
Iya. Baik, Bu Zakia. Terima kasih. Saya harus menggunakan bahasa Inggris di hadapan beliau. Ibunya tidak apa beberapa
Rani sudah.
Kalau mau keluar mau live ini, saya tidak bisa. Biar nanti semua baik isi daftar hadir, tulis baik-baik nama. Karena ini kan boleh akun ini.
Karena kau yang menulis itu.
Good morning, Pak Willy. How are you? You are still mute, Pak.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm good.
It's nice to see you here, Pak.
Yes, very good to see you too. Very, very excited to see so many people in the audience.
Yeah, we are still waiting. We are still waiting for some more.
480 and counting.
Yeah.
So the audience is mostly teachers, students,
And public.
and the public as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because you see that most of the audience are interested in reading and also intercultural communicative
Okay.
competence.
When you say the public, who are these people? Are they parents or
Most
teachers,
of them are
or
teachers.
tuition teachers or
Teachers,
teachers? Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Let me try if I can check if my share screen is working.
Yeah.
You're able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Let's see if I can put you on top there. Is my screen big enough for people to see?
I think so, but it is big enough for me.
Yeah, big enough?
Big enough,
okay,
yeah.
Very good.
Bu Zakia, do you want to say something? Please unmute yourself, Ibu. Yeah, Pak Willy, we have Bu Zakia here with us, and he is the chairwoman of our body.
Oh, a very important person. Hello. What's the name again?
Bu Zakia. Bu Zakia, please unmute yourself. Ibu masih mute, Ibu.
Ibu Zakia.
Di unmute dulu. Di unmute, Bu.
Oh yeah, done.
Okay.
Done.
Okay, I can do that.
Good morning, Pak Willy.
Hello, Bu. Good morning, Bu.
Yeah.
Long time no see. Have we met before?
Yes.
We have, yeah?
Yes. Nice to meet you again, Pak Willy.
Nice to meet you too.
Okay,
I think I should.
I've been in the program in 1995 or something. Very long time ago.
A long time ago. Where? In Singapore? In RDLC?
Yes, in Singapore. Within
how nice.
2 weeks at that moment.
For 2 weeks. Okay, so you were doing a specialist. You were probably doing a specialist course in curriculum development or materials development or language assessment.
Yes,
yeah.
What is here? Short course, short course.
It's a short course, yeah.
Short course, yes. Just 2 weeks at the moment.
Only 2 weeks. Oh, okay. So it's got to be materials development or curriculum development.
Yeah. And I cannot remember the lady.
The lady.
The lady, and Pak Richard and the lady one.
Okay, it wasn't me.
No. but I saw you at the time. I saw you in your office.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that must be before 2000, yeah?
Yeah, 1995.
Before 1995. Okay.
Oh, sorry. 1995, so I was in Australia. No, 1995. 2000 something. Yes, 2002 or 2000 something. Yeah.
2000 something. Yeah.
2002 or 2005. 3 or something.
Yeah. Can you
hear
me?
Long time ago.
Yes.
I can hear you.
We're going to start.
Halo, Frika.
Nggih, Ibu. Ya, kita akan memulai sebentar lagi, Ibu.
Iya.
Oke. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, may I have your kind attention, please? We're about going to start now. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rika Andayani on the behalf of English Education Department, Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, Jember University. I would like to welcome all of you to this international webinar. Privilege to have you with us today. We are now ready to begin the proceeding of the webinar. I am very pleased to be the MC for today's international webinar entitled Integrating Intercultural Communicative Competence and Reading Instruction in English Language Teaching. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you. We appreciate you taking off your busy schedules on Monday morning to join us today. We hope you will find the program we have lined up for you today to be fruitful and engaging. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let me first of all introduce you to the agenda. The first agenda will be the opening speech by Chief of the Committee, Mr. David Imamyarta. The second agenda will be the opening remark by the head of the English Education Department, Faculty of the Teacher Training and Education, Jember University, Ibu Dr. Zakiah Tasnim, MA. The third agenda will be singing the national anthem of Indonesia, Indonesia Raya, and the hymn of the University of Jember. The fourth agenda will be the praying session led by Mr. Rizky Febri Andika Hudoi. And then at 9 o'clock, we will have our first speaker, Mr. Dr. Willy Arenandia, presenting the first materials. And then at 10 o'clock, we will have our second speaker, Fan Gabriel Fang, PhD, presenting the second materials, followed by the third speakers at 11 o'clock, Susan Annie BA, presenting the third materials. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we will start the ball rolling with the opening speech by the Chief of the Committee, Mr. David Imamyarta. Hello, Mr. David.
Hello, Urika. Can you hear my voice?
Okay. Yes, we can hear your voice clearly.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Our distinguished keynote speakers, Dr. Willy Renantia, and also Associate Professor Dr. Gabriel Fanfang, and also our keynote speaker, Dr. Susan Amy. Greetings from Jember University. First of all, I would like to thank every one of you who has embraced your time to take part in our international webinar today. And I do hope that we can learn together and share our knowledge, experience regarding the English language teaching in diverse contexts. Okay, so as we know, in today's English language teaching, many things have changed. Many things that have happened, like the pandemics and also the consistent online language learning. And these phenomena have changed the way we teach, the way we interact with our students, and the way we assess our students, including how they perform in the class. And another point is the concern regarding 21st century education and of course language education, where we have to take into account more than language competence like communication, collaboration, citizenship, and also moral education. And to that end, English language teaching through the reading instruction has very important role to instill novel understanding and also moral values into our students. And that is why our department, English language education, has been very profound in finding new ideas to extend our English language teaching practices. So I do hope that we can, keep learning and sharing not only during the webinar, but also beyond the webinar. We can always, keep in touch via email, and of course, there are many other learning platforms that we can use to stay in touch. Well, I guess that's all then I can deliver for the opening speech. Thank you, Guriga. I pass the floor back to you.
Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the next agenda will be the opening remark by the head of the English Education Department, the Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, Jember University. Ibu Dr. Anda Zakia Tasnim MA. Halo, Ibu Zakia.
Can you hear me, Bu Purika?
Yes, we can hear your voice clearly, Ibu.
Okay. Thank you very much for the time. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The Honorable the Dean of Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, University of Jember, Professor Dr. Bambang Subono MBD, the distinguished speakers, Dr. Willy A. Rinandia from Nanyang Technology University, Fan Gabriel Fang, PSC from Central University, Susan Amy, BA from NIE International. The respectable all the lecturers of the English Education Program, Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, University of Jember, all my students and all the scholars. Good morning and welcome to this international webinar. First of all, I would like to say thanks to Allah for His blessing that we can attend this international webinar today. Next, I would like to say thank you very much to Professor Bambang Subono MBD as the Dean of the Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, University of Jember, for supporting and facilitating this international webinar. Then I also would like to say thank you very much to our keynote speaker, Dr. Willy A. Rinandia, Fan Gabriel Fang PSC, and Susan Amy BA for being the speakers in this international webinar. Next, for all the committees, thank you very much. And all the moderators, all my colleagues, thank you for the preparation, cooperation, and hard work and facility to conduct this international webinar. Finally, I would like to thank you so much for all participants to attend this international webinar today. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are in an increasingly globalized world, so we are more likely to interact with people from different cultures and countries who have been shaped by different values, beliefs, and experiences. So the ability to communicate effectively and appropriately in different cultures, contexts, or in intercultural communication competence is needed here. This condition affects many aspects of life, including in education, also including in conducting reading instruction in English language teaching. So as an English teacher or an English teacher candidate, we need to understand well about what intercultural communication competence is and any strategies that we can apply to integrate intercultural communication competence and reading instruction in English language teaching. From this international webinar, we expect that we can get a clear and useful guidance to conduct our reading instruction in English language teaching by considering intercultural communicative competence so that our reading class can be conducted effectively and efficiently. That is why the topic of our international webinar today is integrating intercultural communicative competence and reading instruction in English language teaching. So please join our international webinar today attentively, and please share and learn more from this webinar. I hope we can get many things from this year. Finally, by saying Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, I open officially today international webinar entitled Integrating Intercultural Communicative Competence and Reading Instruction in English Language Teaching. Thank you. Back to the moderator.
Okay. Thank you, Ibu Zakia Tasnim, as the head of the English Education Department, Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, Jember University. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, for the next agenda will be singing the national anthem of Indonesia, Indonesia Raya, and the head of the University of Jember. Ladies and gentlemen, could you please cross your hands on the chest, please, while we are singing the national anthem of Indonesia, Indonesia Raya. Thank you. And then we are going to singing the hymn of the University of Jember.
Semua
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, the fourth agenda will be the praying session led by Mr. Rizky Febri Andika Hudori. Hello, Mr. Rizky.
Hello, Bu Rika.
Okay, could you please lead our praying session before we start our international webinar?
Thank you. Well, okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. For this occasion, I would like to lead you in Islamic version. For the other participants who have different religion, you may use by your own version. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم حمدا شاكرين حمدا ناعمين حمدا يعافيه نعمه ويكافئ مزيده يا ربنا لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك الكريم وعظيم سلطانه رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبالمحمد النبي ورسولا ربي زدني علما وارزقني فهما ربي زدني علما وارزقني فهما ربي زدني علما وارزقني فهما ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم إني أستودعك ما علمتنيه فارضه إلي عند حياتي وعلى تنسئه يا رب العالمين ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار سبحانك ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين الفاتحة. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I pass the floor to the Master of Ceremony.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rizky Febri Andika Hudori. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so that's the opening ceremony for today's international webinar. And we are going to the main session of this international webinar. The first session will be the presentation presented by Mr. Willy Renandia, led by the moderator, Ibu Eka Wahyuningsi. Ibu Eka Wahyuningsi is one of the English lecturer in our department, the English Education Department, the Faculty of the Teacher Training and Education, Jember University. Ibu Eka Wahyuningsi. Hello, Ibu Eka.
Yeah, Ibu.
Okay, so I'll pass the time to you to lead the first session.
Okay, thank you, Bu Rika. Good morning, dear audience. For the first session, we are going to be with Dr. Willy Renandia, and I do believe that almost all of you have known him because he is one of the famous experts, I think, in the world. But please, before having his presentation, allow me to read his curriculum vitae. So Dr. Willy R. Renandia is a language teacher educator with extensive teaching experience in Asia. He currently teaches applied linguistic courses at the National Institute of Education, Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. He has given more than 100 keynote presentations at regional and international ELT conferences and published extensively in the area of second language education. His publications include Language Teaching Methodology, an anthology of current practice, which was published by Cambridge University Press in 2002, and it was written collaboratively with J.C. Richards, and also Student-Centered Cooperative Learning, which is published by Springer in 2019, and it was collaboratively written with George Jacobs. And he maintains a large language teacher professional development forum called Teacher Voices in Facebook. So Bapak Ibu, if you want to know further about this group, then you can go to FB and check this group. The current position of Pak Willy is a principal lecturer in ELL. Department, National Institute of Education, Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. And talking about his education, Pak Willy got his BA in 1977, IKIP Sanata Dharma, Yogyakarta, Indonesia, and his MA, the first MA on teaching English as a foreign language in 1982, IKIP Sanata Dharma, Yogyakarta, Indonesia, and then the second MA on teaching English as a second language in 1989 from University of Hawaii, Manoa, USA. And finally, Pak Willy got his PhD on educational psychology in 1993 from University of Wisconsin, Madison, USA. And it seems to me that today I can make one of my dreams comes true because it's been a long time for us, Pak Willy, to have you here. So without further ado, please welcome Pak Willy Renandia presentation. Pak Willy, time is yours for about 45 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bu Eka. And it's also my dream to be with you, to be at Jember. Hopefully next year I'll be able to visit the city in East Java. Ladies and gentlemen, today is Monday, right? Monday is not usually the happiest day of the week. It is not, but today is very, very special. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so excited to see so many people in the audience. This morning, the theme, the topic of my presentation is reading the word and the world. Reading the word and the world. Ibu Rika and Ibu Eka. Ibu Rika and Ibu Eka. Can you have your audio and video on, please? Please have your audio and video on. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'd like to have a conversation with you throughout my presentation. Yeah. Easy questions.
Okay, sir.
Okay, let me now get started. I'm going to begin by asking you a few questions. Very easy questions. The answer is yes or no. Let's look at the first question. This is about reading. Yeah, remember the title of my presentation is Reading the Word and the World. Question number one is, this one is for Bu Rika. Bu Rika is a very good speaker. She is the MC today. Bu Rika, reading makes you a better person. Yes or no, Bu Rika?
Yes.
Yes, very good. It's a very easy question. It's a very easy answer. Yeah, reading makes you a better person. Another easy question for Bu Eka now. Reading is a great source of happiness. Yes? No?
Depends.
It depends. When you read a sad story, you won't be very happy.
Now, if I read a sad story, then I'm going to cry.
You're going to cry, but that is happy crying. Remember, when you read, you feel very happy, although you may feel sad. Ibu Eka, are you still there? Rika, still there, yeah? Ibu Rika?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes,
next question is this. Reading is a source of knowledge and wisdom. Bu Rika, answer please. Yes or no?
Yes. Sure.
Yes, very good. Yes, I like this kind of answer. Yes or no. Last one. The last question is this. This is for everyone in the audience. Reading is a great source of language development. Please use the chat box to say either yes or no. Reading is a great source of language development. Can I see your answers in the chat box? Reading is a great source of language development. Yes or no? You can just type in Y or N. Y for yes, N for no. Okay, now the last question now. The last question. This is the question that we've been waiting for. Yeah, if your answer to these 4 questions are yes, 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 then what about this? The last question is, I read every day. Yes or no?
Yes.
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 Very good. Very good. I like that. Yes, I like that. Okay. Again, in my presentation today, I'll be looking at, the word in the text and also the world in the text. When we talk about the world in the text, I think we'll be looking at the cultural components as well of a reading passage that we are using. But first, let me pick up on the last question there that I have on my screen. Reading is a great source of language development. Now, this is a very, very nice quote that I would like everyone to remember. And the quote is from one of the top scholars in the world. The name is Richard Day. He's a very well-known reading specialist. And this is what he says about reading books, about readers. When you read a great deal, you will enjoy numerous benefits. Many, many benefits. Your word knowledge becomes richer. Word here refers to language. The language becomes richer. You know a lot more about the language. And number three, you will become better readers. Please pay attention here. You will become better readers. You will become better listeners. You will become better writers. And you will also become better speakers. And on top of that, you will be able to develop as well this notion of intercultural competence or intercultural skills as well, as I will explain a bit later. So that's reading the word, yeah? But what about reading the world? What does it mean when we say reading the world? Reading actually helps us increase, expand our world knowledge. Now, here are some very interesting quotes. The world was hers for the reading. So that's what reading is all about. If you read a great deal, then you will know about the world and you'll be able to make use of what you have learned from your reading about different places, about different cultures, to enrich, your understanding of the world and also to help you become a better person, and so on. And number two, I think this is a very familiar quotation from J.K. Rowling. When she says, I do believe something very magical can happen when you read a good book. And that is literally true, simply because she has been writing about the magical world of Harry Potter. That's a certain kind of world views, certain kind of ideas that a lot of people, a lot of students in the world can relate to and can also appreciate. The last quote here is, the more that you read, the more things you will know. And the more that you learn, the more places you will go. Yeah. So if you have been reading about Singapore, for example, hopefully next year you will come and visit Singapore. I mean, that's something that is, that is something that often happens to people after they have read about a place of interest in the world. Okay, what does it have to do with education? I think most of you, all of you are familiar with PISA, P-I-S-A, Program for International Student Assessment. Every 3 years, about 70 plus countries in the world take part in this international assessment. And the school subjects that are usually assessed include reading, mathematics, and science. Three, reading, mathematics, and science. Very, very interesting. And Singapore has been doing very well in all these three areas. Unfortunately, Indonesia is not doing well, but hopefully in the future, Indonesia will also be, be developing, or the students from Singapore will also be developing skills and expertise in this area. Now, what is interesting is this: in the latest PISA assessment, 2018, the results are reported this year, actually. There is another component, tidak hanya is not only reading, mathematics, and science, but global competence or global competency is also included in the test. And interestingly, Singapore is also doing very well. Very well, better. In fact, it's number one in terms of the, competencies, the global competencies that these students are able to demonstrate in the test. Now, what does it mean when you say that global competency is important, is needed? What sort of information is required for people to be able to do well in this aspect of competency? Now, here are three things. I hope you will be able to see very, very clearly that global competencies have to do with understanding the world. That's why my title is Reading the Word and the World. So one point that is included in the test is understanding issues of local. So local is important, global, and also cultural significance. Number two, very important, this has to do with intercultural competence, yeah? Understanding, number one. Appreciating different ways of doing things, different perspectives, different cultures, different attitudes towards life, different values of other people in the world. And more importantly, number three, taking concrete, constructive action for the well-being of people in the world. If a country, for example, in Asia, is experiencing economic hardship, for example, as a result of the pandemic, then we feel that we can do something to alleviate, to help those people to deal with life's difficulties. Yeah. Okay, so this is like an overview of why intercultural competence, why knowledge about culture, knowledge about the world, the ability to develop global competence is becoming very important these days. And one of the best ways, if you ask me, one of the best ways is for you to do a lot more reading, to also teach your students how to read for information, and how to read for global understanding, and how to read for intercultural understanding as well. And when we look at culture, for example, basically we are looking at beliefs, we are looking at attitudes, we are looking at language, we are looking at customs, rituals, behavior, and many, many other things of a society, of a community. So all these things are important when we teach reading, and all these things are important when we want to help our students to become a global citizen, essentially. And today, now this is the focus of my presentation today, yeah? Yang tadi itu, the first part of my presentation is just an overview of why global competence is important, why intercultural competence is also important. Let me now talk about reading and how reading can be used to help our students develop these competencies. There are four things that I want to share with you, four reading competencies. And then after that, I will be looking at some of the implications for teaching reading and teaching language in the classroom. Now, here are the four reading competencies. Ibu Rika, diingat-ingat ya. Please remember this. I'm going to ask you the questions about these four competencies later. Okay, reading competencies, yeah. Not all of them are related to culture, naturally, because reading is also about comprehending, knowing the words, the sounds, the spelling, the grammar, and so on and so forth. And because of this, one thing or one competency that we need to help our students develop is this ability to break the code, ability to know the spelling, the sounds, the grammar, and so on. Number two, code breaking is not enough. We need to help our students to develop skills and strategies in comprehending the text. Now, this is where you need a lot of words. This is where you need a lot of word knowledge as well, background knowledge, topical knowledge, cultural knowledge as well. Number three, you need also to develop another competency, which is very important as a text user later on. They will need to pay attention to notice the way the information is presented in the text, and also the language features, the words, the phrases, the clauses that are embedded in the text as well. And finally, the ability to read critically, the ability to read carefully so that you understand what is stated explicitly and what is not stated explicitly but implied in the text. Now, this is where we need to help our students develop the skill of questioning, the skill of verifying, the skill of being open to multiple ideas and multiple perspectives as well. Let me now begin with the first one. The first one is called code breaker. This one is very straightforward, but I think we need to appreciate this as well, especially if you are teaching students English in the classroom as a foreign language. Yeah. Code breaker. So the first thing you need to learn when you learn a language is to understand the sound and the spelling of the words. Yeah. Let me just give you some examples here. For a name like Endang, for example, the spoken word is Endang. The written word is also Endang. They look the same. If that happens, easy. Yeah, the learning load is very light. Endang and Endang. The way it is spoken and the way it is written is the same. Eka is Eka. E-K-A, E-K-A. Now, Wahyu Ningsih is a bit tricky because of the J there. Is it Wahju Ningsih or Wahyu Ningsih? But very small. Yeah, essentially, there is a good match between the spelling and the sound. Very easy. But not all languages are like that. Indonesian is an exception. Bahasa Malaysia is an exception. But if you go to China, for example, what looks like this on the left-hand side, Burika, can you say that? Burika?
None?
Yes. I need to ask Gabriel later whether the pronunciation is correct. Gabriel, are you there? Gabriel Fang?
Oh, hi, Willie.
Yes. Is that how you pronounce it?
It's correct. It's
okay,
correct.
Try again,
The tone
Rika.
is also perfect.
Oh, look at that. Rika is wonderful. But Rika, if I show you this, for example, without the pronunciation spelling on the left-hand side, you'll have a difficulty, yeah? Yeah, because there's not a direct match between what is on the left and what is on the right. Another one. Now, this one is easy. Enough in English is spelled like this. So this can cause some problem to our students. Shout, for example, is spelled like this. Okay. Now, if you ask Sue Amy, Susan Amy, are you there? English is hard, right, Sue Amy? Susan, look at this. How can a language be like this? You know, the spelling is almost the same. The first word, and then the third word, the fourth word, and so on and so forth. But the pronunciation in each case is different. That's right. Why English is tough, yeah, Susan?
Very tough.
Yeah, very tough. That's why the kids, our students, need to spend years and years and years just trying to learn the match between the spelling and the pronunciation. So spelling and pronunciation can be the very first thing that you need to acquire in order for you to be able to read well. In Javanese, for example, if you don't know the Javanese script, I don't think you'll be able to understand what is represented in those pictures. This is the Hanatarako, Dr. Sawala, and so on and so forth. Yeah. Well, in this particular story, basically, you know, two warriors are fighting, but eventually the bad guy lost and the good guy wins, essentially. But my point here is that if you don't know the script, then it's difficult for you to understand what the language is all about. So that's the first one, spelling and sound. Yeah, Burika, and that comes under code breaker. And the other part of the code breaking skill is grammar. Is grammar important? The answer is, ask Amy, she will say, yes, grammar is important, but grammar in relation to reading. In what ways grammar is important? Okay, Burika.
Yes, sir.
Back to you again. Reading word by word and reading in sense groups. Which one is better?
The second one, reading in sense groups.
Why is that? Why is that?
Because we need context, sir.
Yeah. Yes.
Because when we are reading word by word,
yes.
So I'm afraid that we will misunderstanding them.
Exactly. Yes, exactly right. Yes. If you read word by word, it will take you forever to finish reading a book. That's what it means.
Yes.
You need to be able to read in sense groups. But how do you put these words in sense groups? This is where grammar comes in. Yeah. This is where grammar comes in. Grammar allows you to read in phrasal groups or read in clausal groups. And that may sound very easy, but actually it is not. I have some example here. This is an example, very easy example. I like gudeg. I like gudeg is really nice. So you should try this. I like gudeg. The grammar is very straightforward if you know English, yeah? But if you don't know Korean, for example, it's interesting because the grammar is so different. It's nanen is I, and then you, instead of saying like, you say the object first. I gudeg like, basically that's what it says. So the grammar is different. Unless you know how the grammar works in Korean, you will have difficulty reading in sense groups. In Chinese, Gabriel is going to help us now. Interestingly, in Chinese, the grammar is quite similar. For reading purposes, the grammar is similar to English. So I like gudeg, 我喜欢 gudeg. So in theory, people in China will find it easier to read in sense groups than people in other places, in Japan maybe, or in Korea, where the grammar is different. Okay, that's my point about code breaking skills. Final point, chunking for efficient reading. Chunking means group reading or idea reading, if you like. Yeah. If you read this text word by word, it will take you forever. And also you may not be able to understand what the text is when you get to the end of the very last word. You need to be able to break it up to chunk. So this is the skill that is very important to be developed in our students. Okay, final point. When we work with lower proficiency students or struggling readers or struggling code breakers, if you like, this is what is going to happen. This is exactly what you said, Rika. Rika is very good at responding to answers. They will read slowly, they will read word by word, and they will pause to sound out the words. And then when that happens, comprehension is gone, basically. Comprehension breaks down. Yeah? Okay, we are done with code breaker. Rika, now your job. Repeat, please, what I just said. Sorry, no, you don't have to do that. Okay, moving on now to the next competency. Yeah, the first one is code breaking competency. The second one is meaning making or meaning maker. Now, this is when we need to teach our students to read like a reader. What does it mean to read like a reader? To read like a reader means to read in sense groups, but also to be able to construct or reconstruct meaning. I think many of you are familiar with the idea of constructivist theory of learning. Learning is not happening, in a very rigid manner. I tell you something and you learn it. No, it doesn't like that. It doesn't work like that. Meaning is always reconstructed, is interpreted by the reader. And because of that, they need a lot of word knowledge. They need to know a lot of words, and they also need to know this. Word knowledge also becomes important. Let me first explain to you what constructing meaning is all about. Yeah, this is an idea that needs to be emphasized and repeated again and again, that reading is a constructive and very often reconstructive process. Let's say that you give your students a reading passage like this. Yeah, the students read. In order for them to be able to really comprehend the text, they need to work. They need to think about the text. They need to make a lot of connections. They need to interpret, to construct the meaning, because meaning is not like that. Meaning is not given to you, although the text has a meaning, but the text is not giving you that meaning like that. So very often, this is what happens. You need to build. You need to put things together. You need to make connections between different parts of the text. The construction can result in this type of comprehension. Yes, you're able to see that in your head, a house, or the house may look like this, or for some struggling readers, the house isn't complete like that. It happens all the time. As a teacher, I think we need to appreciate that. Yeah. So reading is a constructive, a reconstructive process. And our job as a teacher is to help the students to build that comprehension by making use of their word knowledge and also making use of their world knowledge. This is where the world knowledge becomes important. In everyday language, world knowledge is often referred to as prior knowledge or background knowledge. The technical word for this is often schema or schematic knowledge, if you like. Essentially, it has two parts. The first one is content, information, topical knowledge. The other one is cultural knowledge. So the cultural knowledge, the cultural content of the text is very important. If you miss that, then sometimes it can result in a breakdown in comprehension. I'll show you a dialogue here. I'm not going to ask Sue Amy because she has been in this part of the world for many, many years, and she knows probably what is being implied here. Now, here is a conversation between two persons. We need to meet soon to discuss the new project. And B says, sure, how about Friday? Friday, you must be kidding. Now, at this point, if you're not familiar with the context or the culture, then you will be somewhat lost here. What do you mean by you've got to be kidding? And then B suddenly remembers, oh, okay, I'm sorry, I forgot. How about Saturday? Great, see you then. Do you know what is happening here? Rika? Burika?
It depends, sir.
So no, it doesn't depend. It's very clear. Look at the picture there. No, it doesn't depend on anything. At least for today, the way I use the example, it has just one single meaning. The conversation happens where?
In India?
No, it's not. It's a mosque there. It's not India. I think that's a mosque.
Indonesia.
It's in Brunei.
There are lots of mosques in Indonesia.
No, not in Indonesia.
In Brunei,
this is in Brunei Darussalam or in other Islamic countries where people don't work on Fridays. Friday is a holiday. Yes. So unless you know that, it will be difficult for you to make sense of the text. Now, here's another example. I'm not going to ask Gabriel. I don't know why. If you read, news article about what is happening in Hong Kong or what happened in Hong Kong when there was a lot of demonstration, it would be very difficult for you to understand unless you really understand the culture, unless you understand the political situation, unless you understand the values that people have about the importance of, freedom, democracy, and things like that. They're fighting basically for democracy, whatever democracy means to them. The same thing is happening. If you ask Gabriel to make sense of what has been happening in Indonesia the past 5 years, almost every single day, we see people demonstrating on the street. Ask Gabriel and he will say, why? Indonesia is such a peaceful country, and why people go to the street and sometimes do bad things on the street. Difficult to understand, because of the cultural content or cultural ideas embedded in the text. In addition to world knowledge, the words are also important. Now, this is where the knowledge of the teacher about the importance of vocabulary knowledge becomes so important. This is where knowing a lot of words becomes useful. This is where knowing these words very well becomes also important. So size matters. The number of words that you know is important. Otherwise, you won't be able to understand very well. And number two, your depth, your understanding of the words, whether or not you really, really understand the words is also very important, because words very often convey a lot of meanings. Dictionary meanings, literal meanings, and also cultural and social meanings as well. Okay, so research is very clear that there is a very good relationship, very strong relationship between vocabulary size and language skills. If you don't understand what people are saying to you, chances are you don't have sufficient number of words to understand. If you have difficulty speaking, maybe it's because you don't have enough number of words to express your ideas. The same thing with reading and writing. You need a lot of words. Research also tells us if you want your students to be able to understand a text, they need to know a lot of the words in the text, like 95% or even 98% of the words in the text. Roughly, if you ask me, your students in Indonesia, for example, they need to know roughly about 3,000 words, minimally 3,000 words. 5,000 is better, but minimally 3,000 words. And they need to know these words really, really well. Otherwise, they just know the meaning of the words. They just know the literal meaning of the words. They just know the dictionary meaning of the words, but they don't know the cultural meaning of the words. They don't know the pragmatic meaning of the words. They don't know how to use the words to relate with other people, beyond Singapore, or beyond Indonesia, or with other people from other places in the world. Let me give you an example of the word give. Bu Rika, what does the word give mean? Bahasa Indonesia?
Memberi.
Memberi, very simple, very straightforward. That's what it means. Yeah. What about the second one here? I gave you my word. Translate that. Bu Rika, come on.
Sudah saya peringatkan begitu, Pak.
I gave you my word. I gave you my word.
Berjanji, berjanji.
Yes, berjanji. Look at this. Ladies and gentlemen, pay attention very carefully. The first one, give, and the second give is different in meaning. Yeah. It's giving, but the meaning, the contextual meaning is different. I gave you my word. I gave you my life. Oh, that's interesting. Bu Rika, has somebody mentioned to you, I gave you my life?
Yes, my husband.
Your husband. Okay. I think you should ask him again later tonight.
Okay.
She gave her all to save her child. Again, the word give has a slightly different meaning, ya. Artinya agak berbeda. The next one. Has your husband ever given you the flu?
Yes.
Yes, very often, yeah. Again, the word give has a different meaning here. Next, I'll give it a shot. And frankly, dear, I'm not going to ask you to say or to complete my sentence, but I think you know what it means. The point here is that words are important, but words have multiple meanings, and people use the same word differently depending on context, depending on the cultural background of the persons, and so on and so forth. Now, here is an anecdote. It's supposed to be humorous, yeah? Please laugh, please smile with me after you have finished reading this. The same thing, the word give. I went to the doctor and he gave me 2 months to live. So I shot him. And the judge gave me 30 years. Please laugh, at least smile. Okay, Bu Rika, we are done with text breaker and also, what's the other one? Lupa ya. Text breaker.
Meaning maker.
Meaning maker, yes. Thank you, Bu Eka. Meaning maker, ya. Ini dua hal yang dasar sekali. These are two very basic skills, competencies that all of our students need. The next one is text user. Now this idea is really, really interesting. This is where you want to help your students to link, to connect reading and writing. Reading and writing. Very often the students are able to read well, but their writing ability is not very good. One of the reasons is because we have not taught them how to have our students become text users. To be a text user, you need to pay attention. You need to notice, harus nggateke, memperhatikan. You need to pay attention to the text, to the language features. This is where you need to engage students in this activity. Yeah, help them to read like a writer. What it means is that I am helping my students to pay attention to the language, to the organization of the text, so that later on, when they start writing, they will remember. They will use these features as well in their writing. I hope you're with me on that, yeah? And because of this, when you teach reading, you also need to teach this: the purpose of the text, the audience of the text, the context of the text, and more importantly, the language features of the text. I think many of you are familiar with the genre-based teaching, yeah? Genre-based teaching. This is the same idea. But now we are looking at this in the context of teaching reading. So the purpose, the audience, the context, and also culture. An example, when you give your students a reading passage, a narrative, a very interesting story about something, usually a love story or something. Yeah. What you need to do is to explain what the purpose of the text is. Who is the audience? Is it for young children? Is it for older people? Is it for people from Asia, or is it intended for people from the UK and things like that? What is the context? And what is the culture that is usually embedded here? You'll be surprised that the way people in different parts of the world, the way they tell a story, itu tidak sama. Different ways of telling a story. And because of that, you need to teach your students the cultural aspects of a narrative as well. And finally, also pay attention to the language features. What are some of the important features of a narrative? I think you know all about this, the genre-based teaching approach. Okay, so again, the key word here, another important competency in reading is for you to help your students to develop this ability to read like a writer. And a writer usually pays attention to all these things. What is the purpose? Who is the audience? What is the context? What is the culture? And what are the language features? How the text is organized, how the text is presented to the reader. Yeah, I think that makes sense, yeah? 3, finish. And now the last one. Now, this is probably one of the most important. Text critic. What does it mean, text critic? This is another important competency, especially in the 21st century, when we are flooded with information. And a lot of the information is not worthy of our time. A lot of the information is maybe junk, not very useful. And there's a lot of information that is not true, but a lot of people believe it. So this is an extremely important competency in today's world. So what you need to do is this: you need to help your students to become critical, but not cynical. Ini dua kata yang berbeda, two very different words. Critical, but not cynical. Cynical means everything you see, everything you hear is bad, because you're trying to look at it from your perspective. Oh, I know that guy. If he says something, I just don't trust him. That's being cynical, yeah? But I think we need to develop criticality to be able to, take a position being non-judgmental. Non-judgmental, do not judge, but open up, your own perspective and try to see things from other people's points of view as well. Respect, extremely important. Again, this has to do with critical literacy. This has to do with being interculturally competent as well. Respect for other people's culture. Even within Indonesia, there exist many different subcultures. The culture of Jember people and the culture of people from Manado, they're not the same. They're different. What we need to do is to develop these attitudes of respecting other people's culture, appreciating. Oh, that's something new. I've never heard about this before. Oh, I didn't know that people in China or in Thailand are doing things in a certain way. Now I know. Accepting and also verifying. Now, as you can see here, there's a lot of thinking going on. There's a lot of higher order thinking going on. Again, these days, people always talk about higher order thinking skills. I think when we talk about higher thinking skills, we are looking at things like this: being able or helping our students to become more critical, helping students to be able to see things from Not just one perspective, but from 2, from 3, from 4, from 5, from 6 different perspectives. And that requires a lot of knowledge. And where do you get the knowledge from? From reading. And where do you get the language from? That's from reading as well. And where do you get the thinking skills from? From the teacher. From the teacher in particular. Here is an example of a reading strategy called questioning the author. It's very, very important because students tend to believe whatever is printed, whatever is written on the screen or in a book. So a healthy attitude will need to be developed, and teach your students to question the author. Simple questions like this. Who is the author actually? Is the author educated? Is the author knowledgeable? Does the author have sufficient information to tell me or to tell you about how things should be done? What is the social background of the author? Where is it published? Is it published in social media? Social media is unfiltered. I think we need to teach everyone about that. Social media, information in social media is unfiltered. Anyone can say almost anything. Well, of course, if you say bad things, you may end up in a jail, for example. Yeah, like some of the people that I've seen in the newspaper recently. Is the information biased or is the information balanced? This is a very important skill that we need to teach our students. In Singapore, I think many students are familiar with this way of assessing information, with this way of filtering information, with this way of comprehending a piece of information in a more critical manner. Are you sure? S-U-R-E. Very easy to remember. S is for what is the source? Number 2, do you really understand what the text is saying? And number 3, have you done sufficient research to find out whether or not the information is credible? Research here means, have you checked with your friends? Have you checked with your parents? Have you checked with your teachers? And finally, you are now in a position to evaluate, to assess, yes, the information is credible, the information is trustworthy. Very easy, very important skill that every one of us in education will need to teach our students. This is a filtering skill. Yeah, how you assess information. Okay, I think I'm almost at the end of my presentation. Ibu Rika, the 4 competencies again, what are they? Masih ingat nggak ya? The 4 competencies, Ibu Rika.
The 4 competencies?
Yes, what are they? They're on my screen, you just read them for me.
Yes, code breaker, meaning
maker.
Yes, text critic and text user.
Very good. I think Burika is listening to me and also thinking about the husband at home. That's why she is a bit confused just now. Okay, so the next question I want to address is this. How do we go about helping our students develop these competencies? Caranya seperti apa? How do we do it? Yeah. Now, if you look at the literature, if you look at the opinions from experts, for example, I think they are split. Some people say you need to teach all of them explicitly, systematically, and so on and so forth. But some other people will say, no, some of the things you don't need to teach explicitly, maybe a little, but not too much. So in other words, whether these skills are taught, whether reading is caught or taught. This is what I think. For the first 2, code breaking and meaning making, it's more caught than taught. More caught than taught. And I'll explain what it means a bit later. For the other 2, it's more taught than caught. In other words, for those 2 in the bottom, I think the teacher will need to take a very proactive action. They need to plan very carefully. They need to teach the skills very, very carefully. Otherwise, the students will miss the information. Yeah, let me look at the first two, code breaker and meaning maker. Some teaching is okay, but don't spend the whole year teaching students how to break the code, and don't teach your students one whole year to become a good comprehender. I think a lot of this is caught. And how do you do that? One of the best ways is for you to provide students with a large amount, with a great amount, with a great, a lot of opportunities for them to be immersed, to be exposed to the language. And extensive reading is probably one of the best. It's probably one of the best ways to help the students to develop their code breaking and their meaning making ability. As I said, some teaching in the classroom is okay. You should continue to do that. But if you spend for, like 3 whole years doing, teaching language explicitly, teaching reading comprehension skills explicitly, I think we'll be doing a lot of injustice to our students. For the other two, text user and text critic, as I said earlier on, I think you need to spend time really, really carefully, really, really planning this systematically so that you will be able to develop this knowledge and skills and attitudes of a critical user of the language. You need to become a knowledgeable teacher. You need to develop, a systematic way of presenting the knowledge and skills to your students. And you need to explain again and again what that particular thing that you are teaching your students, why it is important, and how to go about doing it. Now, if you are looking for a general pedagogy for teaching, now here is an example. Step number 1 is I do. You, the teacher, you show it, you demonstrate it, you explain it, model it to your students. Yeah. So you model it, use a reading passage, and then show the students how you construct meaning and how you break it apart and how you are able to show, textual understanding and also the kind of meaning that is hidden in the text. The next bit is, let's do it together. Me, the teacher, and you, the students. Let's do it together because you don't know how to do it yourself. And then the next bit is you do it together. Work in groups, learn from each other, help each other, support each other. And finally, you do it alone. Now, this is just a general model of teaching, important skills in language education. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, to sum up, the 4 competencies, Ibu Rika, the 4 competencies again: code breaker, meaning maker.
Okay.
Yes, text user.
Meaning maker, text.
Yes, and text critic. In other words, if you teach reading and if you want to become a good reading teacher, you need to include all these 4 components, not just 1, not just 2, but all of them. In other words, you need to teach students word knowledge, knowledge about the word, knowledge about the language, knowledge about the language forms, the grammar, and the vocabulary. Knowledge about the world is also very important. Yeah, and eventually help your students develop the intercultural knowledge, skills, and attitudes as well. Let me say this again. Reading is probably the best way to improve proficiency, the word. Reading is also the best way to increase your world knowledge, helping you to understand different ways of doing things, different cultures, and different pieces of information presented by other people from different parts of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been a very, very good audience. And here is a gift for you. A gift is a present for you. If you go to my website, it's called Willy's ELT Corner, basically willyrenandia.com, you'll be able to see a lot of resources, a lot of free publications, and a lot of free information as well in my website. Everything is free. I will not charge you anything if you download the information today, not tomorrow. Thank you so much, Ibu Rika.
Yes, you're welcome, sir.
Today, Pak, you do not give us a little bit longer time.
That was supposed to be a joke, Bu.
Yeah, and I am one of your friends in that website. Okay, Pak Willy, thank
So
you.
it's free all the time, basically, forever.
Okay, Pak Willy, thank you very much for the information. And Bapak Ibu, dear audience, the most important thing I think is that we have to read and read and read. We have to read a lot so that we can, as a teacher, we have to read a lot so that we can teach our students about how to read, and then we can develop, we can expand their knowledge on the world and on the word itself. Yeah. So, but Pak Willy, there are two questions which it seems to me that they are almost the same. They ask you about the way to teach vocabulary, because most students from Pak Wahyu Rahmanto and also from Pak Hirfatul Jana, they ask you the same questions that is about teaching vocabulary, because they think that most students have difficulties in vocabulary, in understanding the text.
Yes, yes. Word knowledge is extremely important. I said early on, you need about 3,000 words. If 3,000 words is too difficult for your students, at least 2,000 words, non-negotiable. I think they need to know about 2,000 words. Now, how do we go about teaching our students this 2,000 words? I think we need to understand two things. Number one, when you teach words, you need to teach the meaning, the basic meaning, and also the pragmatic meaning of the words. The pragmatic meaning is the social and cultural meaning of the words. Yeah, these two. How do you go about teaching it? Tell the students, hey, students, this is what the word means. Yeah, this is the cultural meaning of the words. Very straightforward. And then the next step you can do is memorize those words. Okay? But that is not enough. But that's what we have been doing, but we know that is not enough. I think we need to help the students to see the words again and again and again in different contexts. And where can students find opportunities to see the words again and again in different contexts? There's no other way. They have to read. They have to read and they have to see the words again in story number 1, in story number 2, in story number 3, and so on and so forth, so that they understand the words very well. Number 2, and they remember the words very well. So the major challenges for our students is that you teach them the meaning of the words this week, 5 words. Students, these are 5 new words. These are the meaning of the words. And the next week, the following week, they forget. I don't think we should be surprised. The students forget. We forget. Everyone forgets. Yeah. So what is important is to provide students with that opportunity to see the words again. Minimally, you should put the words on the wall. I think this is a strategy that primary school teachers use. They use what is known as word wall. So the wall is full of words, basically. And the purpose of that is to help the students to remember. That's the word that the teacher taught me yesterday. Now I am seeing it again, and now I remember. But that is not enough, because that tends to be words in isolation. The students need to see the words in context, in meaningful context, where the purpose is clear, where the audience is clear, where the context is clear, and the cultural information is also present in the reading. So reading continues to be the best way of doing it.
Yeah, so when we want to enrich students' vocabulary, there is no other thing that we can do besides reading and reading and reading. But Pak Willy, perhaps for most of the teachers, for most of Indonesian teachers, it will be difficult for them to find the sources, the reading sources. So perhaps you can share with us some of the reading sources that a teacher can go or can take the books from.
Yes. There are many resources on the internet. One that I like because it has both reading and listening and viewing at the same time, is a website called ELLLO.
Hello.
Let me say this again, ELLLO. Now, this website has thousands of listening materials, video materials, and the students can practice listening and also reading the text on the screen as well. So I think it's one of the best out there. Another good resource is ER Central. ER, extensive reading, ER Central. This website also has a lot of information, a lot of reading materials that teachers can download and students can see for free as well.
And they are graded.
They are graded, yes. They are graded stories, yes. And there are many other graded stories that are nowadays available on the internet. Now, my suggestion to you, if your school is well resourced, that means if your school has money, basically, subscribe to a program called X Reading. X, one word, yeah, one letter, X Reading. Now that website has more than 1,000 easy reading materials. However, it's not free. I think you need to pay a little. And I don't think it's very expensive, because with maybe about $10 or $15 a year, you can read more than 1,000 books. If you buy a storybook from Cambridge, for example, with $10 or $15, you can only get 1 or 2 books, and that's all. But with this website, everything is online, and the teachers can also check and monitor the books that the students are reading. The teacher can also check the students' progress and how many books they have read, and the most popular books among your students and things like that. In other words, it has a built-in learning management system. It's a very good program. It's called X Reading. Yeah, X Reading. You can find the information on the internet. However, it's not free. Well, like all good things in life, they are good, and but they are not free.
Okay, so Bapak Ibu, dear audience, at least we get 3 resources of reading that we can explore later. They are ercentral.com, LO, and also xreading.com. But xreading.com, once again, Bapak Ibu, it is not free. So your school has to provide some money to be able to get the books from that website. Okay. And Pak Willy, I think there is no more questions for you. And so Bapak Ibu, I think that's all for Pak Willy's presentation. I give the floors back to the Master of Ceremony. Bu Rika, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Ibu Eka Wahyuningsih, for leading the first session together with Mr. Willy Renania. Okay, thank you, Mr. Willy Renania. And ladies and gentlemen, we would like to extend a very warm thank to Mr. Willy Renania by giving a virtual token of appreciation for giving such a fruitful and engaging knowledge in this international webinar.
Clap, 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 clap.
Thank you so much.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so let's move to the second session. The second session will be the presentation from the second speakers, Van Gabriel Fang, led by Ibu Areta Puspa. Ibu Areta Puspa, PD is one of our beautiful lecturers in the English Education Department, Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, Jember University. Hello, Ibu Areta Puspa.
Yeah, Ibu Rika, I'm here.
Okay, yeah. So Ibu Areta Puspa will lead the second session, and I'll give the time to you, Ibu Areta.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Ibu Rika. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, all right. Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second sessions with me as the moderator, and we have the wonderful speakers, Gabriel Fang. Okay, Bapak Fang, are you with us?
Yes, Ibu, I'm here.
All right.
Is my voice
Yes.
clear?
Yeah. Okay. Before you have the presentations, I would like to read his curriculum vitae. Okay. Gabriel Fang obtained his PhD from the Center for Global English, University of Southampton, UK. He is currently associate professor and at Santa University, China. His research interests include sociolinguistics, applied linguistics, and etc. His recent publications appear in journals including Asia Pacific Journal of Education, Asians English, ELT Journal, English Today, Language, Culture and Curriculum, Language Teaching and Research, Lingua, and System, and the Journal of Asia TOEFL. All right, well, without go further, so this is the time for you, Bapak Feng. You have 45 minutes for presentations, and we have 15 minutes for Q&A at the end of your presentations. All right. Yes.
Thank you
Welcome
very
to
much.
the time
Thank
is
you.
floor. Okay.
Thank you, Bu Areta, for your kind introduction. And also, thank you very much for University of Jamba inviting me again. I remember I visited the University of Jamba about 3 years ago, and it had really nice experience there. And thank you, Bu Eka, for your invitation again. I'm very happy to share some of my research and also based my teaching experience on intercultural communications and also intercultural communicative competence. Let me try to share my screen.
Yeah, sure.
Right. Is that all right? As Buck Willie invited Bu Eka to join the presentation, may I also request Bu Eka when I introduce something more practical, and we've got a bit introduction, just one part of my talk. My topic, let me share. Okay, my topic is critical intercultural literacy in ELT, reimagining intercultural competence. But Willie just introduced 4 different aspects of teaching intercultural communication, teaching cultural aspects. And I think my talk here will echo more on the aspects of text user and text critic. In particular, I'll focus on the critical aspects when teaching intercultural communication and intercultural literacy. On my first half, I will spend about 20 minutes talking on the theory bits, and then another 20-25 minutes on practical bits. So I hope it's a balance for university lecturers and teachers there. I will start with the Declaration on Cultural Diversity from UNESCO. Here we see the importance and we see the complexity of culture, as Park Willie also mentioned. For example, in China, in Indonesia, there are many subcultures. So we need to be very careful when we use a nation plus culture. For example, we need to be very careful when we say British culture, when we say Indonesian culture, when we say Chinese culture.
all right? Because we see here, culture takes diverse forms across time and space. We really need to recognize the complexity of culture, and we see the diversity of different cultural aspects. We see the plurality of culture. And again, when we talk about intercultural communication, we talk about intercultural literacy. Culture should no longer be viewed, be recognized as a noun. It's performed, as well as language is performed. So we really need to see culture from like as a verb, how culture is constructed, how culture is reconstructed and performed. So here is the Declaration of Cultural Diversity. All right. I say that it's very difficult. Culture is notoriously difficult to define. But as teachers, students always like to ask, what is the definition? Okay, what is your understanding of culture? So we see one of the classic definitions of culture from an anthropologist, Taylor. I love to use this example here. Culture or civilization is that complex whole which includes knowledge, belief, arts, morals, law, customs, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by man as a member of society. All right, so that is one of the examples, one of the definitions of culture. But nowadays, the complexity of culture should also be recognized. When I teach students culture, always ask them to think about how culture is taught, how culture is linked to your experience. Okay, and I tell them that culture can no longer be viewed from a fixed national and essentialist perspective. We really need to see the complex relationship between language and culture, particularly when English is used as a global language. This is based on my own research and my own research interests. Okay, I think people are familiar with this intercultural communicative competence. I'm not going to explain or expand this, but because of today's theme of the webinar is intercultural communicative competence, I will use this concept as a starting point for people to think about, all right? And this model as well from different aspects we see here. How do I do this? Okay, intercultural communicative competence, we see different aspects from linguistic competence, sociolinguistic competence, discourse competence. Okay, all are involved. It's like a circle. And then we have intercultural competence and different savants, while Michael Byron proposed. And here you see the locations of learning from classroom setting, teachers and learners, field work. Okay, a teacher can be involved, and learners are the majority, are the main stakeholders, and also independent learning from learners. So this is the model. People should be familiar with this one. Again, think about that model was proposed, I believe, about 2 decades ago. And now, in the 21st century, how do we view culture and how do teachers teach culture? Or even we see a more critical or rhetorical question, can culture be taught as well? I see here that culture should be viewed as a complex social system, as opposed to natural system that emerges through individuals' joint participation in the world, giving rise to sets of shared knowledge, beliefs, values, attitudes, and practices. So we question the traditional belief and traditional definitions of culture. This is from Baker. And I also proposed here that culture should also be viewed as a discourse, practice, and ideology, in which intercultural communication is as a process tightly bound to identity negotiation and construction. culture should also be viewed as ideology. So as teachers, as students, and all different stakeholders, we need to critically re-examine cultural practices and to readdress the concept of intercultural awareness against the backdrop of globalization. Okay, again, forgive me, I'll put more theoretical bits at the beginning and then I'll link to practice at the end. Willie also mentioned about the PISA just now in his talk. And I don't know whether you realize this global competence model proposed by PISA. So here we see different aspects, again, mentioned by Park Willie. We see knowledge bits, okay, cultural knowledge, skills. Again, teachers may focus more on knowledge and skills when we teach, okay, the so-called knowledge to students. But sometimes, or even often, we may neglect the attitude bits and also the value bits. When we really sometimes, it's one-way teaching when we try to impose some of the cultural knowledge to our students. But again, culture or intercultural teaching, from my perspective, it's more like mutual and even multilateral experience when teachers and students should create, right, a dialogue, create different conversations to engage students in open, appropriate, and effective interactions across cultures. Sometimes it cannot be happen within one classroom if, for example, teachers are from the same nation. But again, there are different subcultures as well. And for international audience, if we teach international students, these are more possible to create different opportunities for teachers and students to interact. And here we see to take actions for collective well-being and sustainable development. I'm not going to read everything, but here I just throw out the notion that global competence and the intercultural competence, some people call this, should be recognized in classroom teaching and beyond classroom teaching. Traditionally, people will see a connection of language and culture. We'll see a so-called indispensable. We see language and culture are indispensably linked. While I partly agree that from a traditional perspective, language represents a target culture. For example, we are teaching English for language teachers, all right? So we are told to teach traditional British, American, or Anglophone cultures, all right? And culture or language in this way should be closely linked. But again, we will see that how English is used as a global language, what is the representation of English culture is far more complex than, you know, what we can be exposed. So traditionally, language teaching will thus inevitably have a cultural dimension, and we see the periphery and the center. We'll see the periphery needs to learn the culture of the center rather than vice versa. So when we see the critical perspective, we see the critical literacy, as Park Willie just mentioned about the text critic. How do we empower our teachers and empower our students to teach culture? All right. When English is immigrating, English is no longer a language itself. Okay, English is far more complicated, so I'm not going to read. We have so many linguistic ideologies, cultural ideologies involved as teachers when we teach language itself. So I posed some questions for people to think about, for language teachers, for lecturers to think about, where a language is not associated with any one particular geographical or national entity, as is the case with English. What culture or what cultures is or are the language? What cultures is the language linked to? And when we promote multilingualism, multiculturalism, what does those, okay, for example, what does multiculturalism, what does multilingualism mean to higher education, as well as primary education for those audience who are might be teaching primary school or secondary schools? They are all relevant. So when people are advocating language diversity and intercultural communication, what do these mean to, again, higher education in your own teaching context as well? As teachers, how should we decide on the cultural content to language classroom? Again, these are complicated questions. I don't have an answer at the moment. So as Will Baker argued, that from a traditional perspective, teachers and students may only passively learn certain cultural knowledge in relation to restricted topics from texts or textbooks without questioning the author's perspective from a critical perspective. I would like to reflect on Park Willie's presentation just now. At the end, he argues the importance for readers when we read something from a textbook. All right, we question, we should reflect, should see this from a critical perspective. Don't just take everything for granted that everything written on the textbook is correct, let alone the social media. So we really need to question, we need to create a dialogue from between teachers and students. So from a traditional aspect, we see intercultural communication, teaching, instruction may present a limited amount of cultural knowledge and fail to reflect intercultural communication from a multilingual and multicultural perspective, where users of English may face different emergent situations to deal with cultural references and practices, and to negotiate and mediate between these dynamic resources in intercultural communication. So negotiation and mediation should be important components from, and how should teachers adopt and adapt different teaching materials for students. All right, I would like to link this later on. So another aspect I pointed out is cultural literacy. Okay, so not only learn to read literally, but also we create critical cultural literacy. So this aspect is important because, as here, reduce prejudice and inequality based on culture. We see English language, we see the representation of Anglophone cultures, different mainstream cultures. We see the symbolic power of language and culture. So second one, increase the value placed on diversity and increase the participation in the social practices of that society, including access to institutions and services. I think for students, they should be able to construct, reconstruct, and challenge texts to see how the texts only provide selective and narrow perspective of the world, and to transform social, economic, cultural, and political aspects and stands. I think this is very important. And as teachers, they should empower students and create dialogues, conversations to help students develop. So for teachers, they also need to develop a critical pedagogy in language teaching. All right. So we see language not only from a written form, okay, the sense making, for example, but we see how language is having both structural and functional dimensions, socially implicated as discourse, and thus involved in the construction of individuals and the maintenance of change, and change of societal structures. All right. So I repeat here again, mentions that here language awareness, we see here the language, the conscious perception, and also sensitivity of language learning, language not only as the written format from a grammatical aspect, but also as a social, political, and ideological practice. So from reading teaching, we not only teach students the literal meaning from a text, but also we see how this text is constructed from an author's perspective, okay, as social, political, and ideological practice. So we see the social dimension of language, we see the psychological dimension of language and culture, language and identity, language and society. So from this, hopefully, students will see things from different perspectives, will examine the origins and implications of worldviews, values, beliefs, and attitudes, and try to analyze the construction of knowledge, cultures, identities, and relationships, and make connections between global and local contexts, ask questions about the world, themselves, and others, and question what is presented as universally true. So some other aspects, one is critical multilingualism. Okay, how do language teachers examine, okay, and how we analyze the texts examines inequality and injustice, how they are produced and perpetuated in relation to power and privilege. And here we explore a critical understanding of culture, all right? And again, for reading materials, for text, how do we reconstruct local and target culture? Think about those questions when we have a teaching, when we have a reading material. Is there a clear boundary of local or target culture? If we teach English, for example, is there something called local or target culture? If yes, what are they? If no, how should we teach language as culture? And we also need to view language and culture as emergent. So here one should develop a capacity to negotiate and mediate between different emergent socio-culturally grounded communication modes and frames of reference based on the traditional understanding of culture in intercultural communication. Okay, so I link to critical cultural literacy. I just mentioned about the global citizenship. So one of the aspects or one of the key goals of language teaching, of education, is to foster students to be global citizens. So again, this is UNESCO's response, global citizenship education. To it works by empowering learners of all ages to understand that these are global, not local issues, and to become active promoters of more peaceful, tolerant, inclusive, secure, and sustainable societies. Again, for language teachers, we are not only language teachers ourselves. We not only teach language, but we also teach students the worldview, the values through language. So this is the importance of intercultural communication, of intercultural literacy, and those are the importance. So here we teach students to be text user and text critic. Okay, and again, those are like Byram's explanations of intercultural citizenship. So here we need to see a bridge from intercultural competence to intercultural citizenship. So students not only learn those cultural aspects, okay, those how to learn, how to value, how to respect, how to accept different cultural knowledge, different cultural components, but they are also the actors of cultural knowledge, they're also the actors of this society. So for the aspect of intercultural citizenship, we see here how students interpret, okay, cultural experience, and how they analyze different encounters they have, okay, during their lifetime, and also reflect on those cultural encounters. And as teachers, we also create a platform for conversations, for learning, and we hopefully empower and also change our students to change in the individual from different aspects, including cognitive, attitudinal, behavioral change. So change in self-perception, change in relationships with others, change that is based in the particular but is related to the universal. So students not only need to understand cultural knowledge or not to have something in their minds, the mindset aspect, but when they go out of the classroom, when they participate as a social actor in the society, in different cultural encounters, how they deal with different subtle aspects. Yeah, if they do not understand or they see something they are not expected. So as a cultural citizenship aspect, this is another component for teachers, again, if it's possible to, yeah. How do I, what's the next one? Okay. So we also propose that both more and a greater variety of cultural contents, as well as more intercultural education, which focuses on preparation for intercultural communication, is needed. But again, if we go beyond intercultural communication, we see the introduction of the concept of intercultural citizenship, as this provides a framework to help make sense of student experiences of intercultural communication, and provides an alternative model and aim to the inappropriate native speaker standards. Again, what is the native speaker standard when we understand linguistic and cultural learning? All right. So as English has become a global language, what is a native speaker standard, and do we always need to teach native speaker standard? And we also question the language itself. Is English as a language, is the English language the de facto language for intercultural communication? All right. Again, language should be regarded as a resource. We also need to empower teachers and students to make good use of the first language or of the languages, because nowadays we live in a multilingual world. Different languages, different cultures should also be recognized as resources in the cultural communication. And if you realize now the research and study of translanguaging, okay, how do we make good use of different language resources, as well as student semiotic resources, as well the multimodality aspects when we teach language and culture. And I summarize, these are not inclusive, but based on my summary, it's very important for teachers, if we kind of, and for students as well, learn and speak at least one other language, or to develop a sense of multilingualism and multiculturalism, be reflexive and critical of what has been learned and seen. So again, for teachers, students, self-awareness and awareness of others, be aware that culture and identity are fluid, constructed and reconstructed upon various contexts. Learn, understand, and respect various ideologies, linguistically, culturally, and politically, and be able to transcend one's identity to go across borders, both geographically and politically. Again, I also want to reflect on what Pak Willie just now mentioned, the political demonstration, for example. We really need to see, okay, the ideologies and values embedded, okay, before we interpret the meanings underneath, before we could be able to understand those different, language ideologies in terms of language, in terms of cultural diversity there. Oops. Okay, so I finished the theory bits. So I don't know whether Bu Eka is here. I choose the reading texts.
Yes, yes, Van.
Okay, so for the audience, if you could read, you can choose one of the texts to read, and Bu Eka, maybe you choose this text on the left. If we can, if I spend 1 or 2 minutes, if we could read together silently, of course. If we see these two texts, or if you do the skimming reading, it should be very quick. Okay, so Bu Eka, have you finished?
Yes.
So what's the problem as like university lecturers? How would you deal with this textbook contents to teach? What problems do you see from this text?
I think for the first story, the left one, we almost have the same problem here, Fang. When for most students, especially the students of junior or senior high school, when the teacher comes or when they see the teachers at the gate of their school, then usually they are going to say, Ibu, Bapak, boleh saya bawakan bukunya? May I bring your books? But very often, for Indonesian teachers, very often they are going to let the students bring the book. But for some of them, they are going to say, no, I can bring it by myself. But usually Indonesian people are not going to get angry. But here it seems to me that the story, the first story, the people in the first story get angry because of that thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. And the second story, I don't know whether the audience have read this story. Very interestingly, the second story is an experience of a graduate student and also the issue of dating. Okay. The question, if we read the question here, it seems that it's a Chinese student writing a letter to a friend who seems to be an expert of intercultural communication, asking like, however, when we got to the van, okay, the teachers was not happy and he hardly spoke at all to me the whole way to our school. Why did he get upset with me? Was it wrong to try to help him with his luggage? And the question here is that why do you think the professor became annoyed? If you see the second story here, dating, she said, or friend said, I should be careful about letting him kissing me because he probably wasn't very serious about his interest in me. What do you think? And the question again is, what do you think Earl is the boy here, Earl's intention are towards Xiaojuan? we see the questions are asked from one way. Okay, it seems that the Chinese student or the Chinese student here is doing something wrong or something inappropriate. And we are told, and students are taught to follow, okay, seems to follow the university professor's perspective, to follow Earl's perspective. Okay, so I see the problem of this cultural content is that, how about we see things from a professor's perspective, from the Earl's perspective when they communicate with this Chinese students. So something neglected, something ignored is that we see intercultural communication from one way, not mutual, not different ways. So as critical readers, as critical intercultural communication, as Park Wiley also pointed out, show these questions. For teachers, we see when students read something, ask them, whose viewpoint is expressed? What does the author want us to think? Whose voices are missing, silenced, or discounted? And how might alternative perspectives be represented? And how could that contribute to understanding the text from a critical stance? And what action my students take on the bias of what they learned? So I think in this way, we create a dialogue between students and teachers, and students also learn to challenge what they have read from a textbook. Okay, so this is an example. And some people will say that, okay, reading a text, reading a long text is very daunting. I don't really like to read a long text. And again, as teachers, we can also provide some images for students, from cultural images, because from a discourse analysis perspective, we also do texts, we also do images. So digital photograph mediated intercultural tasks as well. Forgive me 1 minute because my laptop is dying. I really need to charge it. 1 minute.
Feng,
Okay,
Feng,
okay,
sorry.
I'm back.
Feng,
Yep.
sorry, you have 10 minutes left for presentations.
Okay, sure.
All right. Yeah, thank
Sure,
you.
thank you for the reminder. Okay, so this is another example that for teachers, for students who are in lower primary education level or secondary education level, they can also choose the digital examples. For example, if we teach how people greet in different cultures, okay, I think this is a good example if we show students different ways of greeting, and we also ask students to discuss. So reading from a critical stance, this is another model when we teach cultural content through digital photograph mediation. So this is another model, okay? The S, what is seen here? H, what is really happening, the unseen story. How, the O, how does this relate it to our lives? Again, it's very important. And the W, why are things this way? And E, how could this image educate people? And D, what do I do about it? This is based on a paper published in System. I believe that Bu Kusumaning Putri, I can't pronounce this name, sorry about this. It's also from University of Jammu. So this is a good example of how language teachers empower students when through digital photograph mediated intercultural tasks, okay? And also this is one co-author paper with Pak Handoyo as well. And another example, okay, from very simple question. I know rice is very important for Indonesian people. One aspect, we teach an example of eating, we teach an example of food. We try to present different types of rice, and we teach, for example, the plain rice, we teach the Spanish rice, we teach Italian risotto, and also when we teach different varieties, we teach global cultures, we also need to recognize the local. Okay, I always love local Indonesian rice, the nasi goreng there. So how teachers, okay, empower students from a local, from a global and local aspect is very important. We do not teach cultures of others. We also need to teach, we also need to link cultures of us. And again, this is a dialogue that teachers should create, okay, with students. But be careful, okay, as we use cultural images, that sometimes things are not always the same as we see. So again, the critical aspects, the cultural aspects, you may see this is a vase, but sometimes if you pay close attention, you will see the profiles here, okay? So sometimes if you see something at the first glance, don't just take for granted. If we see a very sad face, don't just take it for granted that Monday morning is Blue Monday, something like this. We see things from another perspective. We see cultural aspect from another perspective. You see things are not always the same as we see, as well as cultures, as well as in the cultural communication. Okay, let me finish this in 5 minutes. So when I summarize the talk, there is no singular and universal form of culture. We see cultural hybridization. Okay, and there's no concrete culture anymore. Against the background of globalization, while English is used as an international language, this language can no longer be associated with any culture. So as teachers, English language teachers, we not only teach Anglophone cultures, of course, they should be taught, but we need to bring conversations, we need to present a bigger picture when we teach English. And we see culture as ideology. It's important to realize the notion that culture as ideology, so the reconstruction of us and other center and periphery. So we see here from a critical intercultural communication perspective, there is no right or wrong when we teach cultural contents. And also the backdrop of globalization and super diversity of communication leads the concept that culture should be viewed as dynamic, fluid, constructed, reconstructed, negotiated, and renegotiated. Of course, it provides a harder task for language teachers when we teach language and culture. So again, another example of RISE. So how we rethink and how we address culture and intercultural communication. We don't see culture from a plain RISE perspective. Culture is not simple. Culture is hybrid. Culture is dynamic. So culture is mixed as well. So a metaphor of cultural masala, we mix different aspects, spices, when we see culture, when we view culture from a hybridization perspective. Okay, let me end my talk by using a quote that language is a practice that constructs and is constructed by the ways language learners understand themselves, their social surroundings, their histories, and their possibilities for the future. These are basically my talk. And if you are interested in how critical cultural literacy can be taught, this is a case study, and this chapter was already published. This is a case study, okay? How critical language awareness, how critical cultural literacy can be used in language classroom. And another paper from me published in language teaching research. This one we introduced and we researched how Chinese international students develop or non-develop the intercultural citizenship during their study abroad experience, okay, the extent they develop intercultural citizenship and intercultural awareness. And this is another very good book if you're interested in, published, edited by Byram et al. From Principles to Practice in Education for Intercultural Citizenship. And this is again another book that I recommend. And if you're interested in some of my work, you can also find some of my works at ResearchGate. And time limits, I welcome any questions, but if due to time limit, if you want to extend the conversation, please feel free to send me emails. Thank you very much. That is mainly my talk.
All right. Thank you, Frank, for the wonderful and the outstanding presentations for the second sessions. All right, Frank, actually we have 5 questions from the audience, and 2 questions has the same questions. All right, I would like to read for the first questions. The first questions from Ibu Ida. She asks about there are many models of intercultural communicative competence. Should we use all the models in integrating to ELT? And how do we pick up the model? All right, Frank. You can.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All
thank
right.
you very much for the question. I think from my perspective, it's almost impossible to integrate all the models. So I just kind of condense all these models in a 40-minute talk. I think it depends on the context and depends on students' level. I also saw some questions mentioning that it's quite difficult for teachers, Indonesian teachers, to use this multicultural, multimodal, multilingual aspects of students. Of course, it's not easy, but again, it depends on the contexts. It depends on students' needs and also the learning and teaching goals. So those are something that teachers should consider when they introduce or when they incorporate to teaching materials. So those are the sources that how could teachers create a dialogue, for example, how do teachers adopt and adapt teaching materials, for example, to teach or to incorporate critical cultural aspects. And some may be more relevant to different contexts in Indonesia. I know that Indonesia is a country with different religions, different cultures. So it should be contextualized. This is a simple answer, and it's quite impossible to use. And I don't promote that teachers should use all the models for students. It's too overwhelming for them.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Frank. And the next questions is how if the students have difficulties on dialect, pronunciations, and spoken language, but they have good in writing. How is your solutions for this case, Frank?
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. I'm not sure if I have a quick answer for this question. I know that some students are more good at reading, some students are more good at writing. Probably we can ask students to write journal or learning logs for them if they are more good at writing. They can write their intercultural encounters as the journals or as a series of writing log or journal logs, and they can share their stories with their teachers. From reading their stories, might be that student or students are not may feel not really comfortable doing impromptu speech, I don't know. So they can write down their experiences and they can read the stories and share the stories with their peers. And in this way, they can create a dialogue based on what the student has written there. So different formats of doing things. So this is just a quick suggestion on my head.
All right. Yeah. How the environment is support for the students, right, Frank?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, and then we have the last questions, Frank. And the questions is how to sound teacher was doing critical multiculturalism teaching while many students still have phobia to certain culture. Does the environment like family affect more thickly than schools itself?
Okay, thank you again. I think this is another challenging question because cultural learning and cultural exposure again are very complicated.
Yeah.
Um, I think one starting point for teachers, for parents maybe, is to introduce a concept telling the students or their kids that nation plus culture is a national culture, is a something that should be challenged because we see, and based on their experience, they see the cultural diversity. And as Pat Willie just mentioned, we really learn to create a more like a healthy environment for dialogue, conversation, mutual understanding, mutual respect, for students, for kids to understand the cultural diversity. Hopefully, maybe this is something, but it really depends on different, stakeholders
Yeah.
to create this environment.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much for all of the answers from Fang, for the wonderful and outstanding speaker from Santo University, China. Okay. All right. So
Thank
this
you
is,
again. Thank
yeah.
you.
All right. Hopefully those answer will answer for all of the audience questions. And this is the end of the second sessions. And I would like to back to the Master of Ceremony, Ibu Rika. Ibu Rika? Ibu Rika, are you there? All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, Ibu Areta.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Areta Puspa, for leading this second session with the speakers, Mr. Van Gabriel Fang. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so please give virtual applause to our second speakers, Van Gabriel Fang.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, you're most welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, now let's move to the third session. The third session will be led by Ibu Mutiara Bilkis as the moderator. Hello, Ibu Mutiara Bilkis.
Yeah, Burika, I'm here. Can you hear my voice?
Okay. Okay. Okay, yes. So it is time for Ibu Mutiara Bilkis to lead the third session.
All right, thank you very much, Burika, for the chance. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank you all for the participants for staying put since morning. And this is actually our first international webinar, and we are super delighted to see this many participants here in this room. There are about how many? 830 in Zoom and more than 100 in our YouTube channel. And this is a great number to spread the knowledge of ICC in reading. So we are, like what I said, we are super delighted to see you all here. All right. For those who have been wondering about and cannot sit still until we share the link of the attendance list or the PowerPoint of the materials from the speakers, please rest assured, because it's just as we did in every single webinar that we held, we always provide the link when the Q&A session of the last presenters ends so that everyone can focus and enjoy the presentations and gather beneficial information from them. All right, thank you. Okay, so all right, first let me introduce myself. My name is Bilkis, and I will be your moderator for the last session of the presentation with Miss Susan Amy. Hello, Susan, are you here?
Hi, Ibu Bilkis.
Yeah, Bilkis, that's it. All right, how are you? It's great to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you. I feel as if I'm already in Jemba University.
Yeah, we would really be glad to have you here if Corona ends one day. All right. Now, allow me to introduce you to our audience. All right, everyone, Miss Susan, how should I call you? Should I call you Miss Susan or Susan is just fine?
Normally in Indonesia, people call me Susan.
Okay, Susan, okay. Have you been to Indonesia anyway?
Many times.
Wow, that's great. One day you have to go to Jember. Definitely. All right. All right, everyone. Susan is actually a native speaker from the United Kingdom, and she has provided training and language consultancy in Singapore for the past 34 years. She has extensive and varied experience in a variety of Singapore and the Asian region's educational and work settings, from government, ministries and agencies, health bodies and educational institutions to corporations in the finance, pharmaceutical, and petroleum industries. Well, that's really lots of variety ranges in experience. That's really great. This has provided her with the depth and strength of her experience and at work across the whole range of work fields. Although British by birth, her colleagues and associates have found her to be highly knowledgeable about Singapore and the Southeast Asian region and consider her a highly localized assets to their business network. Now, being very sensitive to language, behavior, and cross-cultural aspects, Susan has consistently innovated in the schools and companies where she has worked and over targeted solutions for communication issues, particularly in intracultural and cross-cultural communication. So she has a very long academic background. Right now, she is currently working on her master's thesis for a master's degree in applied positive psychology for Anglia Ruskin University, Cambridge in the United Kingdom. All right, and education and this is a very long list. Okay, next, perhaps I will. Is it okay to share your CV to the audience?
Fine, it's too much. Cukup.
Okay, thank you. All right, okay, so Susan, we are going to have 45 minutes of your presentation, and afterwards we are going to have like 15 to 20 minutes of question and answer from the audience. I'm going to list the participants' questions to you later from the chat box, and the participants, you are all welcome to ask her directly if you want to, like you want to challenge yourself speaking in English if you're still a student, or you can ask directly to her. We will definitely allow you to do so. All right, now Susan, the floor is all yours.
Thank you.
Before, previously you have sent us the, like the participant notes. Should we share it with your participants?
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay, all right, all right. All right, now the floor is all yours.
How are you sharing it, Ibu?
We are sharing this in the chat box.
Chat box. Okay,
That's
good.
it.
So if you can all look at the chat box, then you'll be able to see the notes. And the reason why I didn't put the slides in there is because they're too big, because I love pictures. And I think pictures speak 1,000 words. Much as I love reading, I do think visuals really help us to grasp very different cultures from around the world. So yeah, so the slides were too big and heavy to send. And so that's why I decided you can look at the notes and go through the slides. You're welcome to we can, later on we can talk about maybe putting them into a Dropbox. Okay. Okay, I had this problem before that for some reason my Zoom doesn't want to go full screen, but I hope you can more or less see what I'm showing you.
We can see this very clearly. It's okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're most welcome.
Okay, so this one slide alone was pretty big because the picture is really beautiful. It's a lot of people reading around the world, and I just love this picture. Okay, so first of all, we just had 2 excellent and wonderful talks by my colleagues, Dr. Gabriel and Dr. Willie, and I so admire the work that they do in research. I wish I had more time to do research because I'm really a practitioner. As you heard from my biography, I'm in the classroom a lot of the time training teachers and training personnel from different sectors. But I just want to say that as language teachers, I admire you so much. The work that you do is really important for helping us understand the world and helping people to be able to communicate well with each other across the globe. So thank you very much for your dedication to this profession. It's scary to look at all the theories that we've just been presented, and maybe some of you feel, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do this. It's bad enough teaching grammar. Now I've got to teach culture. Help, I'm not an expert in this area. So I feel your pain, but also I'm excited by the theories presented today. And I think it's important to remember that both culture and language are from human instinct. We have a human instinct for communities. We have a human instinct to speak and share a language. So I think that this is important for us to remember. You have competence. You have competence on communicating, and your students also have it. Sure, they need lots of guidelines, but I'd like all of you to feel a little bit more confident right now about your ability to teach culture. So that's the first and foremost thing that I want to say, just to remind you, to make you feel comfortable. But there are some other ideas as well that I have here, and I'd like you to participate in the first one, which is, could you open your chat for a minute? Look at your chat, and we're going to make a collection of gorgeous books that have helped us to understand a culture that we've never had any connection with. So I'm going to start off by writing mine. And you can follow with the title and author of a book where I've chosen Kite Runner by Khaled Husseini from Afghanistan, because he really gave me such great insights into Afghan life. So please write in any book that has meant a lot to you for opening the world up to you. Can you just write? Write the title and the author. Can I have your books, please? We want a collection of beautiful books. Wow, Harry Potter, yay. Very good, thank you, Ibu. Okay, some more, quick. Let's have a great collection here. Oh yes, The Good Earth, fantastic. Yes, it changes your life, this kind of thing. Right, Digital Fortress, The Becoming. More Harry Potter fans, good. David Baldacci, yes. Jane Eyre, amazing. Percy Jackson, Sherlock Holmes, yeah. Wow. Oh, To Kill a Mockingbird, yes. Fantastic. Yeah, William Shakespeare, I'm a big fan. Yes. Oh, The Lovely Bones, yeah, that's great too. The Prince, fantastic. These are all great books. Wow, so much culture happening here. Schindler's List, really important. Oh, fantastic. The God of Small Things, also another of my favorites. The Alchemist. You've got a lot of my favorites on this list. That's fantastic. The Alchemist, yeah. Noam Chomsky, wow. Okay, we're not just fiction, but you're right. This Noam Chomsky opened a lot of cultural windows for us. Bob Marley, yeah, why not? Okay. Yeah, so many good topics you've got here. Very good books. Keep them coming. Okay, so there we already have a project which you can share with your students, that they can find out about these books and realize, maybe map them to a world map and see how many different cultures you can span with these wonderful books. Okay, all right, so let's have a look at what I would like to talk about. And as I said, it will be more, you've had enough theory for the day. So I would like to talk a little bit more about some aspects of the reading lesson that can include speaking. Because I believe that when we connect text from another culture to speaking, we can really have a better understanding of the text itself. It needs somehow to be talked about because it's a little bit unfamiliar. And the reason why learning a foreign language is so scary is because it's this, you've got no handleholds. It's really difficult for you to be able to understand what's going on. So just now you heard a lot of words. Actually, Dr. Gabriel also used multicultural. I tend to use multicultural, intercultural, and cross-cultural. And you might consider the definitions here. They're in your notes, which I sent to you. But it's okay to actually just look at just this page here. If you see intercultural and cross-cultural are pretty close, you will find that cross-cultural talks more about two different countries communicating with each other. That's more of the kind of speaking and when we're interacting. Yes, intercultural helps us to understand different cultures and appreciate them and be able to accept differences. A short potted history of the English textbook, because many years ago, somebody actually gave me a colonial textbook from the 1940s or something. And I thought it was really funny. It was for Malaysia, or Malaya as it was at the time. And the colonial textbook was of course all about England. And so if you can imagine, it had things like Big Ben and Queen Elizabeth and all those kinds of references, which was so important to learn at that time because this was the colonial culture. So it was really very much, no wonder English language teaching became associated with propaganda. Post-colonial, when we look at when Indonesia first and then Singapore, Malaysia, and the other countries went independent and gained their independence, the post-colonial reaction was, whoa, no, we don't want to have any culture in our textbooks. It's just got to be language, language, language. But of course you cannot divorce language from culture. It's virtually impossible. And if you do, it becomes very boring. It's not very interesting to look at. So we love culture and it's very hard to keep it out of. Luckily, we're out of that phase. Following that, we had lots of textbooks published in different countries. And I helped to write and publish some of them. And that was fun, where we are embracing our national culture. So as you know, in Indonesia, the diversity is one of its great strengths, that you have so many different cultures. And I wish I could have more lifetime to travel across all the islands in Indonesia to get to know them. But for sure, I know the differences within Indonesia itself are so amazing. So these textbooks are exciting in that they are celebrating national culture, but at the same time, they become a little insular, that is inward looking and not moving out and understanding the world. So English is, of course, your passport to the world. It is not a language that belongs to Australia or the UK or America. It belongs to each one of us. It's there for us to use to get to know each other better. So globalization has really helped the textbook to become a lot more interesting. And we can read about what's happening in South Africa or an interesting story from Chile. So it's a whole lot nicer to look at textbooks nowadays. Okay, so in terms of what I tend to teach people, it is all about intercultural competencies. How do you actually get there? And you might look up some of this later. I don't want to go through theory because you already had a lot of theory. But basically, these are steps. The first thing is self-awareness. Self-awareness is becoming aware of your own culture. A person once said to me, oh, when I went to Bali, I saw India everywhere, but I could not recognize it. And I thought that was a great quote, because there he was in Bali, surrounded by what looked to be Hindu culture, but it didn't look anything like Hindu culture in India. And he got the awareness at that moment, hit in the face, that I understand my culture now. So when you travel abroad and you face another culture, you are thrown back, you are reflected into your own culture, and you think, wow, what an amazing culture I come from. I've just recognized what it is. Or maybe you thought things about Indonesian culture are universal, and you're surprised that they are not. So when you go overseas, maybe you make a few mistakes, which are funny afterwards, but at the time, very embarrassing. So Indonesian culture is only available to you when you meet another culture, and then you realize what it is. Okay, we're all wearing some kind of lens. We're not neutral. We come from one culture, we look at another culture, and we have certain ways of looking at it. So these are the first thing to recognize is what glasses you're wearing, and understanding the culture from that perspective. Just to make yourself aware of this will help you to understand your culture in relation to other cultures. The second step is knowledge building. And maybe this is the bit where you're scared, where you feel, I don't know a lot about a lot of different cultures. Now remember, you are not supposed to be an expert, nor are your students supposed to be experts at other cultures. But what we want to be able to do is to understand some of the behaviors and values of other cultures, so that we do not offend them, so that we are able to communicate well, and we can become friendly by learning maybe a few words of their language, or how to greet them, how to say hello in their language. That is crossing bridges. Third step is to overcome culture shock and bias. So wherever you go, you're likely to have culture shock. I think probably for many people going to Indonesia, the culture shock is possibly the number of people that you see every day, just the population. So it can be overwhelming, can be shocking. And we'll have a look a little bit in a little while at culture shock. Okay, so inter and cross-cultural intelligence comes from being able to use this knowledge and awareness of yourself, and to be aware that you're not an expert in this new culture, but you know more or less how to understand and appreciate what those cultures are doing. So a big thing about culture is the stereotype. And there are stereotypes of every culture that we look at around the world. They tend to be static. They tend to be static, meaning they're not mobile. So they, for example, when I go to Indonesia, people ask me, so they ask me certain questions, and I think, well, yes, but that's not true of the UK today. So I'm going to give you a little exercise here. What I'd like you to do is to write down everything you know about the country I'm going to say in a minute. Just write it down. I'll just give you 30 seconds. Write down anything that comes into your mind when I say the country name. Okay, ready? The country is Mexico. 30 seconds. Okay, you can write in the chat what you would like to say about this country. What comes into your mind when you think of Mexico? Yes, guacamole or guacamole, sombrero. Yes, tacos, dance, Zorro, of course. Yes, lots and lots. Wow. Okay, so you can have a look here. You can see what's happening. We're all saying much of the same thing. Okay, so the country is Mexico, and these are some of the things you wrote for sure. Now, on the left, these are the more static stereotypes, such as the big hat, the man with the moustache, the siesta, the tequila, the dance, and the traditional culture. On the right side, we have more modern stereotypes like the drug cartels, the guns, Mexico City being the most polluted city in the world, and of course, Trump's Great Wall, which hasn't been built. So this is our knowledge of Mexico. We've never been to Mexico, and we carry around this little scheme of what we think Mexican culture is, but it's not going to get us very far if we meet a Mexican, which is what happened to me. So my imagination was, I'm going to meet the Mexican ambassador to Singapore. I imagined what he would be looking like. Of course, he would have the big moustache and he'd have the big hat and he'd probably have guns. And all of this was in my head. And when I met the man, he was slim, clean shaven, no hat, no cigar, no guns, and a very cultured man. And it was such a shock to me to realize what a stupid stereotype I had in my head about Mexican people. So from that day on, I vowed to myself, I'm going to learn about different countries every day. I just choose a country and read up about it so that I become more knowledgeable about such countries. Okay, stereotypes, how to become more competent. Of course, we can look at films, movies, and so on, social media, blogs. This is the active, this is the kind of thing where we get stereotypes from, but we need to also make sure that we're looking at something which is up to date, modern, and also hear the voices, as we do in the reading, the voices of the people from that culture. So because we're close to lunch, I'm just going to share some clips with you that maybe you can see what I mean about looking at culture. Okay. So this is done by HSBC, and they thought of different cultures, helping you to understand each other.
Sorry. In Italy, different flowers have different meanings. Chrysanthemums, for example, are associated with funerals and sadness. HSBC, we never underestimate the importance of local knowledge. HSBC, the world.
Sprzedajemy coraz więcej pralek w Indiach. Dowiedz się dlaczego.
If you're going to do business internationally, you should be with a bank that knows about international business. HSBC Commercial Banking spans 64 countries and territories around the globe.
Look at this. The your machines are 10 times more listed than I used to. Have it?
Your business success is out there. It's your bank.
In some Asian cities, it's considered acceptable for a commuter to fall asleep on the shoulder of a stranger. In New York, it's quite a different story. Of course, you can always adapt. We're the global bank that never underestimates the importance of local knowledge. HSBC, the world's local bank. The English believe it's a slur on your host's food if you don't clear your plate.
whereas the Chinese feel you're questioning their generosity if you do. At HSBC, we never underestimate the importance of local knowledge, which is why we have local banks staffed by local people in over 80 countries across the globe. HSBC, the world's local bank.
Okay, so that's just an example of some of the ads that are done by by HSBC, and I use this in the language class to help people understand reactions to certain situations. Okay, so we move away from stereotypes, and we do a lot better when we don't want to teach stereotypes to our students. So looking at a variety of texts will help us, as Dr. Gabriel said, to see culture from different perspectives. We use comparison, we use contrast of cultures, and that also helps to build our understanding. And of course, as I did just now, we use humor that breaks down prejudices. So very important to keep humor in there to remind them of another very important use of language. So the thing is that when we look at a text which is written in English, which is a foreign language, and then it's written about a country which we've never been to or maybe don't know very much about, we're kind of a little bit overwhelmed as a learner. We feel overwhelmed. And as a teacher, we want to kind of take into the speaking part of the lesson some of the aspects of the text that are going to help break it down for the students and make it easier for them. So it could be words, phrases, and clauses. It could be our expectations of what happens in the story versus what the author says. For example, how people behave in the story is something different from our own culture, and it's very curious, it's very mysterious to us, helping us to demystify that by understanding cultural expectations. So we have an expectation, for example, that very soon it will be lunchtime. Yes, and I'm aware of that. So behaviors and social rules as well. Understanding the background to the story will be useful if we know, for example, that there is a lot of respect for the boss in Asia, whereas in America, the boss is just another guy. He's not given special treatment. Reactions to the events, both of the reader as well as the characters in the story. And last but not least, moral conclusions. So a lot of the books that you mentioned just now, they have moral conclusions which are drawn, and these moral conclusions may be quite different from Indonesian culture. So we're left feeling a bit confused because it doesn't tie up with our understanding of a story. So normally we look at, to help us understand culture, we can use Hofstede's cultural model, which measures cultures into kind of different boxes. And I've given you more detail in your notes there. We'd never use this kind of stuff with our students, really. I think it's much more fun to explore it and then see which cultures are similar. So I have some other ideas that I hope will be more interesting for you to use instead of looking at theory. For example, the artist. So the artist is a person who looks at culture from the outside, stepping back a bit, trying to understand the perspective. And I want to share one artist with you now. And this is an artist from China. This artist spent some time in Berlin. She's from China, so she's from Beijing, and she went to stay in a city in Germany, in the capital city, and she saw that life was very different in her own country and in Germany, and so she decided to paint the following pictures, which show us something. So I'm sure that you know what this is about. If we have a look on the left, this is the German side, and 12 o'clock is 12 o'clock, which we've just gone past. But we're in Indonesia, where we have what we call jam karet, rubber time. And if the meeting starts anywhere between now and then, it's okay. So completely different things. So she's put this in her painting. Another example, which also refers to Indonesia, and you get the shock when you go to Western Europe, is that people are very good about queuing. And in Indonesia, you've got to rush to get something, or else you'll lose out. So she's done this through paintings. It's about culture. This is about social networks, how in Asia, we tend to communicate everything with everybody. And if you have an uncle working in a company, they can get a job for your nephew. This doesn't happen in German culture. So these are just some examples. And you can go to look up Yang Liu, who is the artist who created these wonderful paintings. And we use them, I print them onto cards and use them in the language classroom to get people to talk about differences. So the art makes it fun. There's a little bit of humor in there. I must show you the last one, actually. This one is so cute because for Germans, they see the birds in the tree. They think, oh, beautiful nature. But for the Chinese, they see, yum, food. So she's made it humorous, she's made it fun, and that's really very, very fun to use in the classroom. Okay, so that's one way of looking at it. Now I want to share with you an Indonesian example of how the world of the text may seem mysterious and unfamiliar. And I've written the story in my participants' notes in case I didn't have time. I don't know if there's anybody here who is from the island of Sumba, but this was a film that I saw many years ago. And in the story, a little boy, he is the son of an outlaw. And he's sent to go to a school far away. And in the school, the teachers and the other students avoid him because of his father, that his father is considered like a gangster, like a bandit. And the teacher in the class is teaching Bahasa. Okay, so you just read English for Bahasa, a language which is not his own language. He's having to learn it. And the teacher is pointing to pictures of a man and a woman. And of course, she says to everybody, okay, repeat after me, ini ibu. Oh, everybody repeats, ini ibu. Ini papa, ini papa. So everyone's repeating except for this little boy who is like really puzzled over this whole thing of, what are these pictures you're showing us? And finally he bursts out, he says something because normally he's silent. He says, that is not my father. And he runs away from the school forever. So this made me laugh a lot in the film, but it also made me aware of sometimes how weird education can seem to students, that it's sort of abstract and surreal. So let's have a look at another example. And maybe some of you are fans of Tintin. I'm certainly a big fan. And this was my first introduction to Indonesia when I was a child. So I also, when I was in Indonesia, I picked up the book in Indonesian. And that was very exciting for me, reading it in the whole thing in Indonesian. So very often these stories are, well, they're now considered perhaps even racist, how the stories show that Tintin is the little white guy who comes to save different peoples around the world. But to me as a child, I was innocent, I didn't see any of that. To me, it was wonderful to travel around the world and see different cultures and get a curiosity. From this book, I got a curiosity about Indonesia. Of course, the story is not true about Indonesia. This is talking about aliens coming from the sky, and the Indonesians say, we can't go in the cave because the aliens came from the sky and told us we're not allowed in there. But to me, it was fantastic and exciting. And some of the stereotypes you see there is the bad white man, the one with the cap, he's the baddie. And the guy with the big nose, like the monkey nose, he is Greek and a rich Greek. So that's again a stereotype of Greek people who are no longer very rich. And the Indonesians in the story are very obedient, although this group are actually rebels fighting for independence of Indonesia. Not rebels, but freedom fighters. So the whole stereotype there was interesting. And I read it as an adult with great pleasure, just to see how it's constructed. Okay, so now here's a quiz for you. You've also got this in your participants' notes. And I'm going to ask, Ibu Eka, are you there?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. So, Ibu Eka, what I'd like you to do is to try and figure out if you can work out from these sentences what the culture is. Okay, would you like to do number one? All right, just try. Guess which country.
The folks sat down at the table to have their tea, is that?
Yes, that's right.
But in Indonesia, I think it is not common for us to have tea. But in the afternoon at 4 o'clock or 3 or 4 o'clock, we usually have some other kinds of beverage and also some other kind of snack. So very often we have cola. Perhaps you know what cola is,
yes.
Or pisang goreng, or ketela goreng.
Yes.
What else? But
okay.
not tea. So I think
so where
it
is
is common for Japanese to have tea.
Yes. So is it a Japanese sentence? Is it about, do you think it's set in Japan, this story?
Yeah, I think so, because they have their tea, is it?
Okay. There are a few more clues in the sentence. And when I'm sharing, I don't know how I can't see the chat. Okay, let me see if I can get the chat open. Yes. Okay. So would anybody like to guess? Oh, okay. Yes. Quite a few of you have guessed. Oh, me too is Japanese. Those of you who guessed it's British, absolutely spot on. Okay, so it's not just tea. And it's British because tea does not mean tea, Ibu Eka. It means something like you have in Indonesia, that is a meal in the late afternoon or early evening, but not all over the UK, you see. So depends on which part of the UK it happens. Also the word folks, although it could be British. Okay, right, good, thank you. Okay, some of you have guessed all four. Number one is British because we've got sit at the table, so it's probably like Western style, not sit on the floor, and have tea, and tea means supper or a light meal in the evening. Number two is Japan. Yes, well done. This is Ibu Emma has guessed Japan. Yes, correct. Andy told them proudly about his test results. Indonesian, are you sure? Wow. Okay. Any other guesses for number three? Number three, Chinese. Oh, that one I'm not sure, but maybe Dr. Gabriel would be able to say. I think Ibu Ruth is correct. It's more like American culture. American culture, you talk about yourself and you tell about something good you've done. Yes, in American culture, like, wow, look at me. So to them, it's not boastful. It is something that they are just happy to share. Okay, so that's great. And the last one, you're absolutely right, is probably, yeah, South Asia, could be India. So those, thank you very much for writing in the chat there, that's great. Okay, so this is that no matter how you try to get culture out of there, it will be always there. Okay, so we look at examples of the same sentence expressed in different cultures. Once again, you probably guess, I did an awesome presentation today would be, American. Second one, there were presentations at the conference. The topic I presented was intercultural communication in Bali. I hope the audience liked it. And I hope my professor wasn't ashamed of me. Can you guess which culture that is? You can type it in. Who's drawing on the screen? This is funny.
Dear participants, would you please remove the drawing from the screen?
Yes, please don't do that. It's like graffiti. It's really interesting.
Yeah, because I'm a co-host, I cannot undo this. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
I'm sorry for that.
No worries. It's funny. Okay, the second country, would you like to type it in the chat? There were presentations at the conference. Which culture would speak like that? Anyone want to make a guess? Number 2. Japan, possibly? Yes. Okay, so it could be any number of countries from Asia. Yes, any countries from Asia. So number 1, US, number 2, Asian culture in general. And number 3, my presentation today wasn't too bad. I managed to finish to my last slide. Luckily, my turn was after lunch, so nobody was paying attention. Okay, who would write like this? Indonesian, really? No wonder I feel so happy in Indonesia. So this is how British people tend to talk. They don't like to boast. They usually play down anything they've done well. That is what we call British understatement. So when they say oh, my presentation wasn't too bad, means it was very good, but we don't want to say. So thank you again for guessing. Now, English can give us a sense of belonging in the world, that we can go to different cultures, different countries, and because we have the English language, we have a sense of belonging. In the language classroom, I like to encourage teachers to always feel, let the students feel that the new language belongs to them. So write personal sentences. Choose your books, don't have them chosen for you, so that the language belongs to you, a sense of ownership. And recognizing that language is power. When you have language, there are a lot of things you can do. You can persuade, you can ask somebody to marry you. There are loads of really good reasons for acquiring language. And English is also Indonesian. Look how many words there are from Indonesian language in English already. So definitely Indonesia is a member of the English language. You can probably recognize quite a lot of those. Lots of food, of course, but also things like textiles and animals and so on. So terribly exciting. And only yesterday did I discover that compound comes from kampung. Okay, Indonesia, in an article which I gave you in your participants' notes, Indonesian is recognized as being the most economical of languages in the sense that you have very few words, you can say a lot. But if you look at these two words, ayam makan, they can be interpreted in different ways. And according to the article, I'm not sure if it's true, if anybody here is from Riau, you could maybe contest this, that ayam makan also means the chickens have eaten in Riau district. So depends on the context. We read around sentences, as Dr. Willie said, and we can talk around reading texts in the same way. What does he mean here? Why does he say it like this? And we can talk about this before and after we read the text, so we understand the whole context and how the words come up in the context. In a conversation, which is where we're moving on to getting them to communicate in speaking, we also know that there are nuances and words are not the dictionary definitions. Their meaning has a lot of other things. For example, in Singapore, you say, how was my presentation? And somebody says, quite good. What does that mean? Does it mean it's fairly all right? Does it mean it's satisfactory? Does it mean it was excellent? What does it mean? In fact, quite good means bad. in many contexts in Singapore, that you say it's quite good, which means it's bad. So understanding in a conversation that the words are more than the dictionary explanation. So getting some actual experience with talking to people. Some of the experiments we've done in the language classrooms that I've worked with are contacting businesses in your local area where there are foreigners. Okay, so we're not talking about native speakers, we're talking about foreigners in general. You want to learn about different cultures using your English. Find out all the different companies that are in your city, and the teacher can contact the HR department or similar to ask if a senior person is willing to have a chat with the class. So this is bringing the video into the class, chat with the general manager of a company, and he's from Japan, so he will answer questions all about Japanese culture, and the students get a chance to try out their language. So this has always created a lot of excitement in the classroom that in a minute I'm going to talk to a general manager. Wow, this is so exciting. So all the students really benefit from this, and then they do it the first time, it's so scary, and after that they want to do it more. So as long as we keep it short and sweet, a lot of companies are willing to help out with this, to get the students to really practice. Obviously, when we have tourists around, it's great because you can practice with tourists. But right now, there's a scarcity of tourists in Indonesia. So business partners may be the way to go for now. So conversations I've had traveling around Indonesia are often like this. How are you? This is what they say in blue. And I say, I'm fine. Because this is a kind of formula. We don't actually say, oh, I've got a stomachache, I've got a headache. It's the end of it. It's a little small talk formula. And where are you from? Okay, that's the standard one, dari mana? And okay, I'm from the UK. And they go, UK, what is that? Oh, then, okay, Inggris. Oh, yes, okay, Inggris, yes. Because we have so many names, Britain, England, United Kingdom, UK, so complicated. Then they think, what do I know about UK? Ah, yes, London. Are you from London? You're from UK, you must be from London. No, not really. Then I tell them where I'm from, but they don't understand anymore. They've lost, they're lost. Do you always eat bread, or do you always eat potatoes, or do you always eat fish and chips? So I'm very confused by the adverb here. So always, always. No, not really. We eat rice as well. How much money do you make? Shock. My gosh, you want to ask me this question. Are you married? Well, yes, but what a funny question. And how old are you? Gosh, please don't ask me such a question. I've been on this planet a long time. So these questions, often the students try out these questions with tourists, and the tourists are shocked or laughing, or maybe the conversation is a bit strange. So we need to teach them some small talk tips. And if you go to the internet, there are lots of websites that teach you how to do small talk. So with lots and lots of examples. If you can't get enough, you can always email me. I have lots of them. So more interesting is to talk about the situation that you're in right now. You're traveling on a bus to Yogyakarta, and you can say, is this your last stop? Are you stopping in Jogja? You're going on to Bali? So talking about travel, talking about the weather, talking about the journey, all of these are acceptable and safe topics and will not get you into trouble. Shared experiences, places we've been to. Also some self-disclosure. If you say, by the way, I'm actually from Jember, I'm not from Jogja. So if you tell them something about yourself, then the foreigners will also tell something about themselves. So it is a good tip for small talk is how to open up the conversation. And here's a topic list for you. When you're looking at a reading text, look at the topic that is focused on in the reading and see where you want to have your pre-reading activity about the speaking activity, what you want to discuss. So these are things about culture that we can learn about slowly. Here are some examples of speaking activities we can do. For example, we first of all look at our own culture, that's self-awareness, writing about our own culture, hometown. And this one we can share with students from other countries. So don't forget that Indonesia is not the only country struggling with intercultural communication. People in every classroom around the world are going, oh my gosh, intercultural communicative competence, how do we do it? So you can connect with schools in different countries from various websites and have either a typed conversation or even a video conversation with a class, and you can present about Indonesian culture to them. And they will be so happy. Say, wow, now you've told us about Indonesia. We didn't know that's what Indonesia was like. So we are also a part, Indonesia is a part of helping people in South America and in Italy to understand our culture. So pairs can also join other pairs, and as Dr. Gabriel said, we can have pictures, because pictures, they say so much about culture. So I'd love to share lots of pictures with you, but we don't have time and it's lunchtime. And we also do guessing. We also do guessing in the sense that we, before we read, we try to guess something about the culture. After we read, we look back at our guess to see how well we've done. So it's learning how to build our curiosity about the text and also about the culture. Okay, I have a short text here, which is about Halloween. It's in your participant notes. What you could do is to highlight all the problematic, strange concepts which are in this passage. And actually I've highlighted them here. All things to an Indonesian student would be, wow, you mean days get shorter? That's really strange. And things they may not know about Halloween, about there being witches flying in the sky and so on. So trying to understand that this text is about a festival, and we don't actually see witches flying in the sky, but we dress up in costumes just for fun. So this is a text from a textbook, an English textbook. And I thought how difficult that would be for a student in Indonesia to get through. Phrases like, black skeletons stand out against the autumn sky. Unless you've seen a winter tree, which looks like this, it's got just the branches and no leaves, you wouldn't understand black skeletons. It's so strange. So definitely a video and some images of celebrating Halloween is definitely going to help the students to understand this text. So remember that meeting cultures in text, we're likely to look at vocabulary, the expectations that we have as readers from our own culture, and the expectations of the culture we're reading into, behaviors, social rules, reactions to events, and the moral conclusions that we may have come up with. We can make a moral conclusion before we read the story and then either be surprised or agree with the moral conclusion that the writer gives us. We're all familiar with pre-reading and post-reading comprehension activities, and we can easily incorporate cultural aspects and intercultural aspects into these kind of tasks. It's not that difficult. So with all the theory behind us, it helps us a great deal. But practically, what we're looking for is helping students to understand the text better. So we can still use the traditional ones as well as I said, modern ones, which is like linking up with schools and businesses in order to let students really try out real speaking with another culture. So lots of different things that you can do in your classroom to make it come to life. For example, games and competitions from other cultures is a lot of fun. So for example, I'm sure you've all heard of the piñata from Mexico, which is the ball full of sweets and toys. And everybody has to bash the ball till it breaks open. And then everybody gets sweets and toys. So what a great way to introduce students to, and we actually built one ourselves in one classroom. using paper and flour and water, made our own piñata. So getting involved in the actual culture is really fun too. Okay, lots and lots of activities I have here for you, but I feel you must be pretty exhausted by now, having listened all morning, and so many brilliant ideas from my colleagues to absorb and take away with you. My message to you is please have fun. Have lots of fun in your classrooms with culture, with learning about cultures. And as a teacher, be a learner alongside your students. Don't be afraid of doing that. We learn something every day. So I've been 34 years in Asia, and I feel sometimes I'm only just starting to learn about the cultures here. So that's what it takes. Well, thank you very much, Ibu Bilkis, for hosting me.
Okay, you're most welcome. That was really great. Okay, it was really interesting. You know, I do think that all the participants agree with me that when we are discussing cultures, it's never ends. There is no end to it, right?
Yes,
and when you told us about the what was it about Riau, then I just knew. Oh, is it like that? I'm from Indonesia, and I don't know about that. Because this is a vast country with hundreds and thousands of cultures, and it's really difficult for us sometimes, even when we are in Java Island, when I meet the people from the other culture, it is a bit difficult to not to miscommunicate things.
Very true, very true.
That's right.
Situations too.
That's right. Perhaps sometimes it's not our intention to do so, but the other party accepts it the other way. So it's kind of, yeah, okay, we have to be very careful with other people from other cultures, especially when we are not using our language, in this case, which is English, right?
Yes.
All right. I do like it when you say that when you teach your students, teach them a sense of belonging to the language, that this new language belongs to me. I really like that. That's really, I haven't thought about this, but perhaps I should teach this one day to my students, like, to give them the sense of belongings to the language so that they do not feel alien at all with the English, because yeah, like what Pak Willy said before, and you said before, English is hard. Right. Okay. All right. I do think that we have only one question, or perhaps I'm missing something. That I think some of our students are confused about the quite good, which is equal to bad. Is it always like that all the time, or is it only happening in certain culture? Yeah. Okay. Could you please explain more to our students?
That's a great question. I felt I hadn't explained that enough. But I'm conscious of time. So when I said context is critical, you have to read the context to understand and listen to the tone of voice. How it's said in Singapore is quite good. Do you hear it?
Yeah, yes, yeah. The
hesitation.
intonation is different, right?
Quite good.
It's quite good actually. It's quite good actually. Okay.
There is always the word actually, sir.
I have something to say about quite good.
Sure.
Usually what happens is this. When you want to say about yourself, your presentation, for example, my own presentation, I can say, I think my presentation just now was quite good. That's okay. But when you want to say something to other people, I think you want to make it, melebihkan. You want to say, Susan, that was an excellent presentation.
Right.
So instead of
you
Susan,
do not
that
want
was
to
quite
say
good.
quite good.
Quite good is not good, basically. Quite good is not good enough.
Quite.
Yes.
The
Quite.
Quite.
Now the word quite becomes an insult.
Yes, it's you're absolutely right, Ibu. You hit the nail on the head there, because it is laying it down, making it sound bad.
Okay, so it is okay for you to do it personally, but not to others.
Yes, to yourself. Yeah.
Yourself.
Yes. One thing that I want to share with the audience is this: the word inter. Inter means between. So it's not just about us trying to understand other people's culture, but it's other people also who need to understand us. So it goes both ways. That's why it's called intercultural. So it's not the case that I have to understand Susan's culture all the time. Susan will also have to adapt and know my culture, my way of talking, my way of doing things as well. And when that happens, you know, the world is a beautiful place, because that's where we can dance together. That's where we can work together, you know, with minimal miscommunication and misunderstanding. So that is, I think, very, very important. Another point I want to make is this. The best time to teach intercultural competence or intercultural knowledge or skill is at home. Begin early at home with your own kids. When you read stories to your children, I think you can tell them a lot of things about the cultural contents of the story. And you should also be able to select materials from different, you know, places, from different social cultural background as well. And that is one of the most excellent ways of bringing up your children, so that they become more knowledgeable about the world. It's not just about, you know, their own home or their own community, but it's the community, it's the culture of the whole country, of the whole region, and also of the whole world. And that's how we should be bringing up our children these days. And that should start at home, especially before the children turn, you know, become teenagers. The best time is during their formative years, when they listen to you, when they, you know, basically can understand a lot of information from you as their parents.
Absolutely.
Yep.
That's great. Thank you for the insight, sir. So the word inter really means something, actually. It's
Yeah.
not like us only trying to understand the other party's culture, but
Absolutely.
it's also vice
Yeah.
versa, right?
I would
Yes,
definitely
absolutely.
like to hear if any of you do manage to link up to other classrooms in other countries and do get students to present on Indonesian culture.
That's right. Okay. So
Yeah.
there's one time that during my student days that I was like mistakenly say one word because I had a friend and he what is it? He went to the USA and he became a chef in there, and he told me that I was a chef in this restaurant and the other, and I say, really? And what I meant was like, you do? Like that, I was surprised, but because I say the word really, and he was kind of offended. Yeah, because I was like of cultural understanding at that time, so that was really bad. And I was like, oh shit, well, I think
that's a very good point, because a lot of, you know, young people in many countries in the world, they work as a waiter, which is very
That's
common.
right.
And that's how they get their extra, you know, spending money. Or sometimes they use the money to pay for their own education. So being a waiter is fine. Something which is not okay in maybe in Jember or in Indonesia.
That's right.
If you're a waiter, oops,
It's
waiter.
not common.
My mother will not approve of you as my future husband or something.
So
that's definitely right.
Yeah, different culture, different ways of doing things. And we need to teach our young children about the cultures of other people. It's not good if they say Indonesia is the best, my culture is the best. That's not good.
Right. I do agree with
Yeah,
you.
that's not good.
So
That's
really
right.
means several things there, right? Did you notice? It really is, I don't believe you, or amazing.
Yeah, that's right. So I think,
amazing.
yeah, I think he thought the first.
You. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. I thought he thought me talking like, really, I don't believe you like that.
Yes,
because he told me that he was a chef, and I was like, really?
Yes.
Was really offending him.
Exactly.
So I was really regretful at that time, and I started to okay, I need to learn more in the language, on the culture, so I can get more understanding on how I should communicate properly with people using English. Yeah, that's right. And I like what you said, Susan, when you started this presentation. You mentioned that you cannot divorce culture from language. I keep telling my students that because when you're learning a language, of course, you are going to learn cultures, lots of them. And this is what we are doing right now, telling them to understand. And I like what Pak Willy said about teaching cultures starting from our own home, so that our kids in the future will not be judgmental towards other cultures. That's what we want to do, right?
Yes.
Okay, so participants, dear participants, if you do have more questions, I think this is really great. All the information from Jason and from Pak Willy, from Fang, that was really great, really insightful and inspiring. So do I hear more? Okay. Oh, Andy's mentioned question. Okay. Question to all speakers. We have one right now. Discussion of religion and religious values might be sensitive, but this can be unavoidable in the Indonesian EFL context. Okay, of course you do know that. How might this issue be best dealt with from the perspective of interculturally informed EFL pedagogy? From Mr. Iwan Munandar.
Susan is an expert in that area. Having lived in Malaysia for so many years.
Because I dared to put it on that list of topics, right? And I thought there might be a question about that. But it is intercultural dialogues on religion happen a lot and are very fruitful and very useful. Of course, they have to be handled pretty carefully. But again, we're saying, look at your lenses. What lenses are you wearing from your own culture? And try to be open and appreciative of other cultures, accepting of other cultures. So we are teaching that in probably the area where it is most needed, which is through different faiths. So if you feel that you can't do it in Indonesia, I can understand why you would be nervous to start this whole thing. But I have seen it done beautifully. And together with my Indonesian students, we have discussed religion together quite easily and well. So, I mean, there is a lot to it. And over to you, Pak Willie. What do you have to say?
Yes, I think all religions in the world have common values that are shared by people, regardless of their language background, their religious background. There are some common, values that people share, like respect. I mean, we can easily teach respect from any angles, from any religious, perspectives. Well, there are some areas that we should not, discuss openly in the classroom because that may cause, friction and very strong disagreement. But the starting point always is, like Susan said, open. Are you open to hear other people's perspectives, other people's belief?
And I wouldn't start with religion to begin with. I would start with food. If you talk about food first, you can link cultures beautifully. That we all share our love of food, and just sharing recipes and talking about food in general already helps to break down that concern of this is too different from my culture.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Starting from food, it never gets old, right? Everyone loves food. Okay, all right. Because we have only very limited time, there is one more question, I think, from Yanur Chandra, Bapak Yanur Chandra. Some of our people and tribe in Indonesia, including my students, they do not want to be forced to speak in English, even accepted around neighborhood due to their perception that it is part of the language colonialization.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, so they keep their culture being nature. So what do you think? Okay, for all speakers. What do you think, Susan and Mr. Willie? Willie?
Okay. There's nothing we can do actually if they feel very strongly about learning a new language or learning English or learning French. There's nothing we can do. I mean, we'll leave it up to them. But if it's just a matter of speaking, I don't want to speak that language, that's fine. But in the world today, if you don't understand English, I think you are at a big disadvantage because information, if you go to Google, 80 or 90% of the information is in the English language. And that is it's a great source of information. You will be really at a disadvantage if you don't understand English. You don't have to speak the language if you don't want to. I think we should respect that.
We cannot force them anyway.
There was a case of a student in China, from Western China, who said, why do I need to learn English? I will never use it. I'll live in China my whole life. I don't need to speak English to anybody. So the teacher persuaded him to say, I don't want to speak English, but to say it in English. She got him to say, I don't want to speak English. So it kind of made the whole class laugh, and he himself thought, oh, I could do it. Actually, it's okay. I can do it.
really funny. It's teaches some more.
Reverse psychology.
That was a good way.
Yes, I think very interesting observation is what happens in some countries in the world. These countries are typically monolingual, and they believe that English is important, but at the same time, they also believe that, you know, they don't want to be seen as losing their identity when they speak the language. I think if you look at Japan, for example, I'm a bit overgeneralizing here, but a lot of people in Japan feel, well, they believe English is important, but many of them generally refuse to, you know, they don't feel very comfortable using the language. If you bump into a group of tourists from Japan, for example, you know, they will approach you and they will ask you questions in Japanese instead of in a language that, you know, that we understand. Yes, it's probably this feeling of discomfort that if you speak a new language, then you'll be losing your identity as a member of that language community.
Okay, perhaps it's also part of a defense mechanism, sir.
It's possible too, yes, because they've been trying, they've been learning for many, many years, and they're still not able to use the language. Yeah,
that's right. Because if they once the alphabet is really different, right? There are so many things different. All right, I think that will be the end of the third session. Thank you very much, Susan and Pak Willie, for enlightening us and give us lots of insights, wonderful insights that open our mind about the cultures that we can take from reading and from learning language. All right, that was really wonderful. So everyone, I invite you all to give a round of applause for Susan and Pak Willie and Gabriel Fang. That was our committee being very loud, okay? We are all very excited for this webinar. All right, thank you very much for everything, for all the questions. I'm really sorry that we cannot cover all the questions because the time is very limited. So I'm going to pass it back to our MC, Master of Ceremony, Burika. Time is yours again. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ibu Mutiara Bilkis, for leading the third session together with Madam Susan Amy.
Okay, Amy, can you please stop sharing your screen? Thank you. It's okay. Thank you.
Okay. Dear invited speaker, Mr. Willie Renania, Mr. Fang Gabriel Fang, Madam Susan Amy, thanks for sharing with us. Thank you for the insights, plenty of food for thought, and your valuable insights. Dear, okay, so let me share screen first. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please give big applause for Mr. Willie Renandia, Fan Gabriel Fang, and Madam Susan Amy.
It is.
Okay, let me stop share first. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking your time, your busy schedule on this Monday morning. Oh, belum. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Van Gabriel Fang. And thank you, Madam Susan Amy. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule on this Monday morning. Thank you for your kind cooperation and attention. There is no point in coming to an event like this unless you do something with the lessons. We hope you achieve what you came here to achieve. See you in our next webinar, and we will have around four online, four national and international webinar next month. Hope to see you again soon. Have a very good morning, everybody. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Goodbye. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Pak Willy and Susan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Susan.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
That
Mr.
was really
Frank.
great. We had a fun time with you guys.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye. See you again.
Thank you, Pak
Thank
Willy.
you very much. See you next
Okay,
time.
Susan and also Feng. Are you still here, Feng? Yeah, because he is still teaching, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, once again, thank you, Pak Willy, thank you, Susan, and also Feng for your great presentation today. Thank you, dear audience, for being here with us.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have shared the exit ticket. So please fill in the form not later than 2 p.m. So you will get the e-certificate together with the materials from the 3 presenters after you filling out the exit ticket in the chat box. Okay, thank you, everybody. See you.
See you.
See you. Thank you. See you around, ladies and gentlemen.
Bye. See you next month, everyone.
See you next month, Bapak Ibu. Next month, we are still going to have some other events, so please keep in touch with us.
Yes, sir. Sure.
Enggak, di aku enggak.
Bapak Ibu, if you have submitted the exit ticket and you have got the e-certificate and the